If you don't subscribe to the channel, all the stories will happen to you. Get ready for the nightmare. The evening air was thick with the scent of rain, an ominous reminder of a storm that loomed just beyond the horizon. I sat curled up on my couch, wrapped in an old blanket, lost in the world of my favorite book. The comforting sounds of the rain pattering against the window created a soothing backdrop, lulling me into a state of blissful relaxation. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was just past 8. The dim light of the living room cast long shadows across the walls, making the familiar surroundings feel strangely unfamiliar. My heart raced in anticipation of the coming storm, but I dismissed it, attributing my unease to the weather. As I turned another page, I heard the distant rumble of thunder, shaking me from my reverie. The first flash of lightning illuminated the room, casting eerie shadows that danced around me. I shrugged off the shiver that ran down my spine, telling myself it was just the chill from the storm. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a movement outside the window. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly turned my head. It was only a tree branch swaying in the wind, but it made my pulse quicken. I knew I was being irrational, but the night felt alive with whispers and secrets. I shook my head, trying to dispel the growing unease. Maybe I'd watched too many horror movies, or perhaps I was still rattled from the news report I had seen earlier about a string of burglaries in the neighborhood. I glanced out the window, half expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows, but the street was empty, the only sound the soft drumming of the rain. Just as I settled back into my book, the storm intensified, and another flash of lightning cut across the sky. This time, I heard it, a faint scratching sound, barely audible above the roar of the storm. I frowned, my heart beginning to race again. I set my book down and got up, moving cautiously toward the window. My breath caught in my throat as I peered out into the darkness, straining my eyes to see through the sheets of rain. The streetlights cast a weak glow on the pavement, illuminating puddles that formed in the dips of the road. And then I saw it. A figure stood just beyond the reach of the light, half hidden in the shadows of a nearby tree. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt a chill run down my spine. The person was facing my house, but their features were obscured by the darkness. I squinted, trying to discern who it was, but the storm made it difficult to see clearly. Fear clawed at my insides, and I felt an instinctual urge to back away from the window. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it someone lost? A neighbor? Or worse, someone with ill intentions? I took a step back, my body frozen in place as I struggled to process the sight. What should I do? I debated whether to call the police or simply ignore it. My mind was in turmoil, wrestling with the unknown. Suddenly, the figure shifted slightly, moving closer to the house. My breath caught in my throat, and I pressed myself against the wall, hoping to remain unseen. My heart raced, pounding in my ears as I strained to hear any sounds over the chaos outside. A burst of thunder rattled the windows, and in that split second, the figure glanced up. My heart stopped. I felt the blood drain from my face as I met their gaze. Wide, curious, and chillingly intense. I could feel my breath quickening, fear wrapping around me like a vice. I was paralyzed, caught between the urge to run and the need to understand what was happening. But the moment stretched, the storm roaring outside as I remained hidden, watching in horror. Just then, the figure turned away, disappearing into the darkness, leaving me standing there in the silent aftermath. The storm continued to rage, but all I could hear was the deafening beat of my heart as I replayed the moment in my mind. What had just happened? Who had been looking through my window? The questions raced through my mind as I stepped back into the living room, every instinct screaming at me to lock the doors and shut the curtains. As I did, I felt a sense of dread settling over me. The night was far from over, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone anymore. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows and making the walls creak as if the house itself were groaning under the storm's fury. I locked the front door and drew the curtains tight, hoping to create a barrier between myself and the outside world. Despite my best efforts, the encounter lingered in my mind like a specter, haunting my thoughts as I paced the dimly lit living room. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I glanced at the clock again. 9 o'clock. The streetlights outside flickered, their soft glow barely penetrating the downpour. I tried to refocus on my book, but the words blurred before my eyes, replaced by the image of that figure lurking just beyond my window. With each tick of the clock, the atmosphere grew heavier, my pulse racing in time with the storm. I contemplated calling a friend, but what would I say? Hey, I think someone was staring at me from outside my window. The idea seemed absurd, even to me. I felt foolish for letting my imagination run wild. But then, a soft scratching sound broke through my thoughts, sending a fresh wave of adrenaline coursing through my veins. It was faint at first, barely audible above the storm's roar, but it grew louder, a persistent tapping that seemed to resonate with my fear. I turned my head towards the window, my heart racing again. Was it just the wind playing tricks on me? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, and approached the window, my heart pounding in my chest. As I peered out into the darkness, the rain lashed against the glass, distorting my view. I leaned closer, squinting into the night. The scratching continued, now accompanied by a low, almost imperceptible whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "Help me." The voice seemed to murmur, but I couldn't tell if it was real or just my imagination fueled by fear. My heart raced, and I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I quickly pulled away from the window, backing up against the wall as a wave of panic washed over me. What if the figure had returned? What if they were trying to get in? I felt trapped in my own home, a prisoner of my own imagination. I needed to calm down. I stumbled into the kitchen, seeking comfort in the familiar surroundings. As I made my way to the sink for a glass of water, my eyes darted back to the window. The scratching had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that felt oppressive. I filled the glass, trying to steady my trembling hands. I took a sip, the cool water a brief respite from the heat of my rising anxiety. I was about to turn away when a flash of lightning illuminated the backyard, and I froze. There, standing beneath the oak tree, was the figure once more. This time, they were closer, just beyond the edge of the light cast by the house. I squinted, desperate to make out their features, but the shadows obscured everything. My breath caught in my throat as I realized they were facing my house again, unmoving, as if waiting. Was it the same person? The thought filled me with dread. I dropped the glass, the sound of shattering glass echoing in the quiet of the house, and my heart raced at the sudden chaos. I scrambled to clean it up, all the while stealing glances at the window, half expecting to see the figure rushing toward me. But nothing happened. The night stretched on, heavy and silent, the rain continuing to fall in relentless sheets. After I cleaned up the glass, I sat on the couch, my heart pounding, staring at the window like it held the key to understanding the nightmare unfolding around me. The scratching noise returned, this time louder, almost deliberate. I felt a chill creep down my spine, and I fought the urge to run to the window. Instead, I picked up my phone and dialed my best friend, Sarah. The phone rang, but her voicemail picked up. "Great," I muttered under my breath, frustration mingling with fear. I tried to calm myself, reminding myself it could all be a figment of my imagination, a combination of the storm, the dark, and my recent paranoia. But just as I began to believe it, another flash of lightning illuminated the backyard once more. And then, to my horror, I saw it clearly. The figure had moved closer, now just outside the range of the faint light from my living room. They were crouched low, their face obscured by shadows. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt paralyzed with fear. "Who are you?" I whispered, though I knew there was no way they could hear me. I thought about calling the police, but the thought of making such a call while facing whatever that was outside sent a wave of dread through me. I turned off the lights in the living room, plunging myself into darkness, my heart racing as I waited for whatever would happen next. I held my breath, straining to listen. The whispers seemed to grow louder, now sounding almost pleading, but the storm drowned it out, the wind howling like a wild beast outside. Suddenly, I heard a distinct thud against the wall next to the window, followed by a soft, desperate whisper. "Let me in." The words sent icy fingers of terror running through me, and I stifled a gasp. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was frozen in place. caught in the grip of fear. And then, just as quickly as it had started, the storm seemed to quiet down, leaving an eerie stillness in its wake. The figure stood still, watching, waiting. My mind raced with questions and fears, but deep down, I knew one thing for certain. The night was far from over, and whatever was outside my window was not going to leave until it got what it wanted. The darkness enveloped me like a thick fog, my heartbeat echoing in my ears as I remained crouched behind the couch, terrified of what might come next. I could feel the weight of the silence pressing in on me, punctuated only by the occasional rattle of the wind outside. The figure's whisper echoed in my mind, and a cold dread settled deep in my gut. What did it want from me? I held my breath, straining to hear any movement outside. For a moment, everything was still. But then, a slow, deliberate scratching began again, this time closer to the side of the house. It was a sound that sent shivers down my spine, and I knew I couldn't stay hidden forever. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone, praying for a signal, but the screen remained dark, a cruel reminder of my isolation. I bit my lip, weighing my options. I could either stay here, waiting to see what would happen next, or I could confront whatever was lurking just outside my window. After what felt like an eternity, I decided I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. I grabbed a heavy flashlight from a nearby drawer and slowly stood up, heart racing as I took a cautious step toward the window. I needed to see for myself what was happening outside. With each step, the floor creaked beneath my feet, and the sound seemed amplified in the silence. I peered out through the parted curtains, the rain now reduced to a light drizzle. My heart dropped as I saw the figure still crouched under the oak tree, but it had shifted slightly, turning its head towards the house. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to sound brave. The figure did not respond, but I could see it better now, illuminated by the soft glow of the moon breaking through the clouds. It was a man, dressed in dark clothing, his face shadowed but with a distinct, unsettling familiarity. I squinted, trying to make out his features, but every time the moonlight illuminated him, the shadows swallowed him whole again. I felt a flicker of recognition, someone I had seen before, but where? The man stood completely still, and I could feel the weight of his gaze on me, heavy and unyielding. The scratching noise intensified, now a frantic clawing at the side of the house. "Help me," the voice whispered again, and this time it was clearer, almost a plea. Panic surged through me, and I stumbled backward, bumping into the coffee table. "Get away from my house," I shouted, summoning every ounce of courage I could muster. The figure flinched, and for a moment, I thought he might retreat, but then he stepped closer, a determined look crossing his shadowed features. "Please, you have to listen to me," he called, his voice ragged and desperate. "I'm not here to hurt you." His words sent a shiver down my spine. "Who are you?" I demanded, feeling both terrified and confused. I can't explain everything right now. Just trust me." He took another step forward, and I caught a glimpse of his eyes, dark, pleading, almost desperate. Something inside me flickered, a spark of empathy cutting through the veil of fear. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice softer now, curiosity mingling with my dread. "I need your help," he said, his voice trembling. "You don't understand. They're coming for you, and I can't let that happen." A jolt of fear coursed through me. Who was he talking about? Who was they? My heart raced, and I could feel the walls closing in around me. "What do you mean?" The man opened his mouth as if to explain, but before he could say another word, a low growl erupted from the shadows behind him. My blood ran cold as I saw another figure emerge, this one much larger, looming behind him. The first man turned, panic spreading across his face. "Run," he shouted, his voice filled with urgency, but before I could process what was happening, the larger figure lunged at him. My instincts kicked in, and I grabbed the nearest thing, a small plant pot, and hurled it at the window, shattering the glass. The sound echoed through the night, and I didn't hesitate. I jumped through the opening, the rain soaking me instantly, and landed with a thud on the wet grass. I glanced up just in time to see the larger figure disappear into the shadows, chasing after the man who had been watching me. I had no idea what was happening, but my heart raced with adrenaline and fear. I had to know what was going on. "Wait," I called, my voice hoarse as I ran after them, my feet slipping on the wet ground. The man turned back, his eyes wide with surprise. "You shouldn't be out here. They'll find you too. Who are you? What's going on?" I shouted, my breath coming in quick gasps as I stumbled after him. "I'm trying to help you," he yelled back, glancing over his shoulder. "They want you for what you know." "Know about what?" I pressed, desperation spilling into my voice. But before he could respond, the larger figure reappeared, rushing toward us with a terrifying speed. I froze, my body screaming for me to run, but I stood there, paralyzed by fear. "Run!" the man shouted again, but this time I didn't hesitate. I turned on my heel and bolted toward the front of the house, adrenaline pumping through my veins. My heart raced as I dashed through the rain-soaked grass, the pounding of my footsteps mixing with the growls of the creature behind me. I glanced back just as I reached the porch. The larger figure was almost upon us, a dark silhouette against the night. "Get inside!" I screamed at the man as I lunged through the door, slamming it shut behind me. I locked it quickly, panting heavily as I pressed my back against the door. "What was that?" I gasped, my heart racing, but the man was right behind me, having slipped through just in time. He locked the door behind him, his face a mask of determination and fear. "We need to hide," he said urgently, looking around the room. "Why are they after me?" I asked, still breathless, my mind racing to comprehend everything that had just happened. "I can't explain right now. Just trust me," he replied, glancing nervously out the window. "We have to find a way to protect you." "Protect me?" I echoed, confusion and fear swirling inside me. "From what? Who are you?" He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. "My name is Jacob. I'm here to help you because I know what they want. But first, we have to keep you safe." I stared at him, my mind spinning with questions, but one thought stood out above the rest. "Who are they?" Before he could answer, a loud crash echoed from outside, followed by a series of frantic scratches at the door. My heart raced as I realized the creature was still out there, and it would not stop until it found what it was looking for. The sound of scratching at the door sent a cold shiver down my spine. My heart raced as I pressed my back against the wall, trying to distance myself from the ominous noise. I exchanged a worried glance with Jacob, who stood rigid, eyes darting around the dimly lit room. The air felt thick with tension, and I could hardly catch my breath. "Stay quiet," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "We can't let it know we're here." The scratching intensified, nails scraping against the wood with a relentless persistence. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears, each beat echoing the dread that enveloped me. "What is that thing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but it trembled with fear. Jacob hesitated, glancing at the door as if he could see through it. "I'm not entirely sure," he replied, his brow furrowed. "But I know it's not something that should be here. We need to get somewhere safe now." "Where?" I asked, my mind racing. "What do we do?" Before Jacob could respond, the scratching stopped abruptly. An eerie silence fell over the room, thick and oppressive. I held my breath, straining to hear anything beyond the stillness. Then, suddenly, a deep, guttural growl reverberated from the other side of the door, sending chills down my spine. "They're testing us," Jacob murmured, eyes narrowing. "They want to see if we're scared enough to make a sound." "What do we do?" I repeated, panic rising in my throat. "We need to find a way to escape." "Follow me." Jacob turned, moving swiftly toward the hallway that led to the back of the house. I hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the door, but the growling intensified, and I realized I had no choice. I followed Jacob, my heart pounding as we slipped into the shadows of the hallway. The house was dark, but I could just make out the outlines of furniture and decor that felt both familiar and foreign in the dim light. I had lived here for years, yet in this moment, it felt like a maze filled with unseen dangers. As we reached the end of the hall, Jacob paused at a door I had always thought was a closet. "This way," he said, pushing it open to reveal a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. I swallowed hard, glancing back at the main room where the creature lurked. "What's down there?" "A basement," Jacob replied, urgency in his voice. "It's not safe up here. We need to go down and barricade ourselves in." I hesitated for a moment, fear gripping me as I glanced at the door. The scratching had started again, more insistent than before. The creature was growing impatient. "Okay, let's go," I whispered, forcing myself to step into the darkness. The air was damp and musty as we descended the stairs, and I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing down around us. Jacob reached for a flashlight, illuminating the small space. Dust motes danced in the beam of light, and I caught a glimpse of old furniture covered in sheets, forgotten relics of a time long past. We stepped into the basement, and Jacob closed the door behind us, locking it with a heavy click. "We'll barricade it from the inside," he said, moving quickly to stack crates against the door. I helped him, my hands trembling as I pushed the heavy boxes into place. "What now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Jacob turned to me, the flashlight beam casting shadows across his face. "Now we wait and listen," he replied. "We need to be quiet. If it's still out there, it won't be able to find us." I nodded, my heart racing as I sank onto an old couch that was pushed against the wall. The darkness felt suffocating, and I could hear my own breathing, loud and uneven. I stared at Jacob, who was crouched by the door, listening intently. "Why are you helping me?" I blurted out, the question burning in my mind. "You could just run and leave me here." Jacob paused, his brow furrowing as he looked at me. "Because I know what you're capable of," he said slowly. "You have a gift, and they want to take it from you." "A gift?" I echoed, confusion clouding my mind. "What are you talking about?" "I can't explain everything right now, but trust me, this isn't just about you. It's about something much bigger," Jacob replied, his voice low and urgent. "You need to understand that they won't stop until they have what they want." "What do they want?" I pressed, my heart racing. Jacob opened his mouth to respond, but suddenly, the scratching at the door intensified. The creature was back, clawing at the wood with a ferocity that made my blood run cold. "Chill," Jacob hissed, pressing his finger to his lips. I swallowed hard, trying to suppress the rising panic as I listened to the creature's movements. The scratching turned into banging, a relentless pounding that made the door tremble. I could see the shadows shift in the dim light as the creature's presence loomed just outside. "What is it?" I whispered, fear creeping into my voice. Jacob shook his head, eyes wide with fear. "I don't know, but we can't let it in." My thoughts raced as I clutched the edges of the couch, feeling utterly helpless. "What if it gets in?" I asked, my voice quaking. "It won't. We just need to hold on," Jacob replied, determination etched on his face. The pounding grew louder, and the door rattled violently, sending a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. "I can't do this," I gasped, my breath quickening. "Stay calm," Jacob urged, leaning closer to me. "You have to trust me. We'll find a way out of this." I nodded, though fear still gripped my heart. But deep down, I felt a flicker of hope igniting within me. Maybe together, we could face whatever was lurking in the darkness. The creature continued to batter against the door, and I closed my eyes, focusing on Jacob's voice. "Listen," he said, "you're stronger than you think. You just need to believe in yourself." I took a deep breath, grounding myself in his words. "Okay," I whispered, opening my eyes. "I'm ready. Just tell me what to do." As if sensing our resolve, the creature outside paused, the scratching suddenly ceasing. For a brief moment, silence enveloped us, leaving an unsettling stillness in its wake. "What's happening?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "I don't know," Jacob replied, his eyes narrowing in concentration. "But we need to be ready." The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy, as we stood poised to confront the unknown. The abrupt cessation of the creature's assault felt both like a reprieve and an ominous prelude. I could see Jacob's muscles tense as he gripped the flashlight, his gaze fixed on the door as if he could will the threat away with sheer willpower. "What if it's gone?" I whispered, desperate for reassurance. "Don't count on it," Jacob replied, his voice low. "It's more likely just waiting for us to let our guard down." I nodded, my thoughts racing. The darkness felt like a living entity wrapping around us, reminding me of my vulnerability. "Do you really think it's after me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jacob turned to me, his expression serious. "I know it is. That's why we need to figure out how to stop it." "How do we do that?" I asked, my mind racing with possibilities. "There's something about this house, something buried deep within its walls," he replied, glancing around the dimly lit basement. "I've heard stories, whispers about a hidden room or passage that holds answers." I frowned, trying to recall any tales I had heard about the house. "But I've lived here for years. I've never seen anything like that." "That's the point," Jacob said. "It's concealed like the truth about why this thing is targeting you. But if we can find it, we might discover how to fight back." A sudden crash from above sent both of us jumping. The creature had returned, and this time it sounded angrier, more desperate. My heart raced as I looked at the door, realizing we had little time left before it breached our fragile sanctuary. "We need to find that hidden room, now," Jacob urged, urgency coloring his tone. He shined the flashlight around the basement, illuminating the old furniture covered in dust. "Help me look." We began to search the basement, moving the cluttered furniture aside. Each creak and groan of the house heightened my anxiety. What if the creature found a way in while we were distracted? "There has to be a clue somewhere," Jacob muttered, pushing a dusty armchair aside. "Something that tells us where to look." I turned my attention to the far wall, where an old bookcase stood, its shelves filled with forgotten relics and knickknacks. I approached it, running my fingers over the spines of the dusty books. "What if there's something behind here?" I suggested. Jacob joined me, and we began to pull books off the shelves one by one. A heavy silence fell around us, only interrupted by the relentless pounding of the creature against the door above. Each thud sent a jolt of fear through my body. Suddenly, one of the books fell open, revealing a hollow space behind the shelf. "Look!" I exclaimed, pointing to the dark opening. "There's something here." Jacob knelt down, peering into the shadowy void. "It looks like a tunnel," he said, his eyes widening. "This might lead us to the hidden room. Should we go in?" I asked, fear tightening my throat. "There's no other choice," Jacob replied. "We'll either find answers or end this nightmare once and for all." I swallowed hard, fear battling with determination. "Okay, let's do it." We crawled into the dark tunnel, the flashlight illuminating the damp walls as we moved forward. The air was cool and musty, and I could hear the faint sound of dripping water echoing in the distance. I pressed closer to Jacob, feeling a sense of safety in his presence. The tunnel twisted and turned, and as we crawled deeper, I felt the walls closing in around us. "What if we get lost?" I whispered, panic rising again. "We won't," Jacob assured me. "Just follow my lead. We need to stay focused." As we continued to move through the darkness, I could feel the weight of the house above us pressing down, the fear of what lurked outside fueling my adrenaline. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we emerged into a small, dimly lit chamber. I took a moment to catch my breath as I glanced around. The walls were lined with strange symbols and old photographs, their faded edges hinting at long-forgotten stories. In the center of the room stood a large wooden chest, its surface etched with intricate designs that glowed faintly in the dark. "What is this place?" I breathed, stepping closer to the chest. Jacob shined a flashlight over the symbols on the walls. "These look like warnings," he said, tracing his fingers over the markings. "This room was hidden for a reason." "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling the weight of his words. "Legend has it that the house was built over something dark, something that preys on fear and despair," Jacob explained. "It targets those who have a connection to its past." The chest seemed to pulse with energy, drawing my attention. "What's in there?" I asked, glancing at Jacob. "Only one way to find out," he replied, moving closer to the chest. With a deep breath, I approached, my hands shaking as I reached for the lid. The moment I touched it, a jolt of energy surged through me, and I hesitated, a flicker of doubt clouding my mind. "Are you ready?" Jacob asked, watching me closely. I nodded, steeling myself for whatever lay within. "Let's do it." Together, we lifted the lid, and the moment it creaked open, a wave of cold air rushed out, enveloping us. Inside, we found an assortment of items: old photographs, letters, and a small, ornate mirror. The mirror caught my eye, its surface reflecting not just our images but something deeper, a connection to the house and the creature that haunted it. "What are those letters?" I asked, my voice trembling as I picked one up. Jacob scanned the contents of the chest. "They look like messages from previous occupants," he said, pulling out a stack of yellowed papers. "Maybe they can shed light on what happened here." I began to sift through the letters, my heart pounding as I read snippets of stories filled with fear, warnings, and despair. Each letter seemed to recount the same haunting theme: voices in the night, shadows watching, and the relentless scratching that echoed through the halls. "Do you see this?" Jacob said, holding up a letter that detailed an encounter with the creature. "It's the same description. It targets those who have a connection to its darkness." I felt a chill race down my spine as I recalled the mysterious occurrences in my life. "What does that mean for me?" I asked, fear flooding my voice. Jacob looked at me with intensity. "It means you have something it wants. You're tied to this house, and it won't stop until it gets you." The weight of his words settled heavily on my chest, and I took a step back, feeling overwhelmed by the implications. "What do we do?" I whispered, glancing back at the tunnel we had just crawled through. Jacob met my gaze, determination in his eyes. "We need to confront it, but first, we need to uncover the truth behind that mirror. It might hold the key to stopping this nightmare once and for all." I nodded, a sense of resolve building within me. "Okay, let's figure this out together." We turned our attention to the mirror, its surface swirling with an otherworldly light. I reached out to touch it, feeling an inexplicable pull, as if the house itself were guiding me toward the truth. The mirror felt cool against my fingertips, an odd sensation that coursed through me like a current of electricity. As I touched its surface, a ripple of energy surged, and the world around us shifted. The symbols on the walls began to glow, illuminating the room in an eerie light, casting flickering shadows that danced like phantoms across the chamber. "What's happening?" I gasped, pulling my hand back as fear coursed through me. "Don't let go," Jacob urged, his voice urgent. "We need to see what it shows us. It might reveal the creature's weakness." With trepidation, I placed my hand back on the mirror, and the rippling surface began to change. Scenes unfolded before us, images flashing like a movie reel. I saw glimpses of previous inhabitants of the house, families filled with laughter, friends gathered for joy, and then a gradual shift to darkness. The joyous moments faded into images of fear, shadows creeping in the corners, eyes watching from the darkness, and the faint sound of scratching echoing through the halls. I stumbled backward, my heart racing. "This can't be real," I gasped, the weight of the truth bearing down on me. "How can this happen?" Jacob stepped closer to the mirror, his gaze locked onto the shifting images. "This is how the creature feeds. It thrives on fear and despair. The more it watches, the stronger it becomes." As I continued to watch, I saw a woman, her face hauntingly familiar, standing in the hallway, her eyes wide with terror as the scratching sound filled the air. "That's my mom," I gasped, recognizing her from the faint memories that floated in my mind. "She lived here." "Yes," Jacob confirmed, his voice steady. "This house has a history, and you're part of it." The scene shifted again, and I watched in horror as my mother turned to the camera, her expression filled with desperation. "If you're seeing this," she seemed to say, though her lips did not move, "you must find a way to stop it. It's stronger than you think." Tears filled my eyes as the reality of my mother's past struck me. She had been trapped in this nightmare, just as I was, a victim of the house's darkness. "I didn't know," I whispered, my voice breaking. "It's okay," Jacob said softly, his hand resting on my shoulder. "You're not alone. We'll face this together." I wiped my tears away, feeling a surge of determination. "What do we do? How do we stop it?" "We need to understand what it wants," Jacob replied, his gaze fixed on the mirror as the images continued to shift. "There's a connection to that chest and what's written in those letters. We have to unravel that thread." Suddenly, the mirror went dark, the images vanishing as a chilling wind swept through the chamber. The temperature plummeted, and I could feel an unnatural presence closing in around us. "Get ready," Jacob warned, his grip on the flashlight tightening. "It's here." My heart raced as the scratching returned, more pronounced now, reverberating through the walls and echoing in my ears. I glanced around the room, searching for a place to hide or something to defend myself with, but the space felt claustrophobic. "Stand by the mirror," Jacob commanded, his voice steady. "If it comes in here, we can use it to confront the creature. It might be our only chance." I nodded, taking my place in front of the mirror, the cold surface seeming to pulse with energy beneath my hands. I could feel the air thickening, a tangible weight that pressed down on me as the scratching grew louder, now accompanied by a low growl that seemed to vibrate the very air around us. Suddenly, the door at the end of the chamber burst open, and a figure emerged from the shadows, shrouded in darkness. The creature was grotesque, its form shifting and undulating like smoke, but the eyes... It had eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light, fixed on me with an intensity that sent chills down my spine. "Why do you disturb my domain?" it hissed, its voice a chilling whisper that wrapped around me like a vice. "You're not welcome here." I swallowed hard, feeling a mix of fear and defiance. "You don't own me," I shouted, surprising myself with the strength of my voice. "I won't let you take me like you did my mother." The creature recoiled slightly, as if my words had struck a nerve. "She was weak," it hissed, its voice dripping with disdain. "You are nothing but a vessel for fear." "No," I shouted back, my heart pounding. "I'm not afraid of you. I will break this cycle." With that, I pressed my hand against the mirror once more, feeling a surge of energy flowing from it. The symbols on the walls began to glow brighter, illuminating the creature in a dazzling light. The air crackled with tension, and I could feel the power of the mirror drawing strength from my resolve. The creature screeched, a sound that echoed through the chamber, shaking the very foundation of the house. "You cannot escape your fate," it roared, lunging toward me. Jacob stepped forward, placing himself between me and the creature. "You will not have her," he shouted, raising the flashlight as if it were a weapon. "Join me," the creature hissed, its voice seductive and dark. "Embrace the fear. It is your only salvation." I felt a wave of doubt wash over me, but I clung to the memories of my mother and the warmth of Jacob's presence. "No," I yelled, summoning every ounce of courage I had. "I will not give in." With a surge of determination, I thrust my hand against the mirror, calling upon its power. The glow intensified, enveloping the chamber in a blinding light, and for a moment, I felt a connection to all those who had come before me, those who had suffered, those who had fought back. The creature recoiled, its form flickering in the light. "You think this will save you?" it screamed, but I could hear the fear in its voice. "I know it will," I shouted, the words reverberating in my chest as I focused on the mirror's energy. "You have no power over me." The light surged, engulfing the room, and with a deafening roar, the creature was drawn into the mirror, its anguished screams echoing as it vanished into the depths of the glass. I fell to my knees, the energy of the mirror coursing through me, and for a brief moment, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. Jacob knelt beside me, his expression a mix of awe and relief. "We did it," he breathed, his voice shaking with disbelief. I looked at the mirror, its surface now calm and reflective. "But is it really over?" I asked, uncertainty creeping back in. Jacob took a deep breath, glancing around the chamber. "I think it is. We've broken the cycle. But what about the others?" I asked, thinking of all the people who had suffered in this house. "We need to share their stories," Jacob replied, his eyes shining with determination. "We can't let the darkness win. Together, we'll shed light on this place and free those who still linger." I nodded, feeling a new sense of purpose igniting within me. "Let's do it," I said, standing tall. As we made our way back through the tunnel, the weight of the house seemed to lift. We had faced the darkness, and while the scars would remain, we had emerged stronger. As we stepped back into the dimly lit hallway, the atmosphere felt different, lighter somehow, as if the oppressive weight that had loomed over the house for so long had begun to dissipate. The flickering lights overhead seemed less ominous, casting soft shadows that no longer felt threatening. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the air that felt cleaner, almost invigorating. "We need to find out more about this house," I said, my voice steady but tinged with urgency. "There must be records or something that can help us understand what happened to all those people before." Jacob nodded, his expression serious. "The attic might hold some answers. It's where a lot of old things are kept. If we're lucky, we might find documents or even photographs." Together, we climbed the creaky staircase, each step echoing in the silence. The attic door was old and heavy, and I could feel a chill radiating from behind it. As Jacob pushed it open, dust particles danced in the shaft of light that spilled into the room, revealing a cluttered space filled with forgotten memories. Old furniture lay draped in sheets, boxes were stacked haphazardly, and the air smelled musty, like time itself had been trapped within these walls. I stepped inside, my heart racing as I scanned the room for anything that might provide clues about the house's history. "Help me look through these boxes," Jacob said, already rummaging through a nearby stack. "Maybe we'll find something interesting." I nodded, and we split up, rifling through the contents of the boxes. I unearthed an assortment of old clothes, toys, and household items that seemed to tell stories of their own, each with a layer of dust that hinted at years of neglect. I felt a pang of nostalgia for a time I never truly experienced, wondering what had happened to the families who once filled this house with laughter. "Hey, over here," Jacob called, interrupting my thoughts. I turned to see him holding up an old leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. "What did you find?" I rushed over to his side, my excitement palpable. "This looks like a diary," he said, carefully opening it. The handwriting was neat, almost elegant, but the ink had faded in places. It belonged to someone named Margaret. She lived here in the early 1900s. "Margaret, that sounds familiar," I murmured, trying to place the name. "What does it say?" Jacob began to read aloud, his voice echoing in the stillness of the attic. "Day 45 in this house, and I still hear the scratching at night. I've asked the neighbors, but they look at me as if I'm mad. I can't shake the feeling that something is watching me, waiting for me to slip. The others who lived here, they've disappeared. I fear I may be next." A chill ran down my spine as I listened, the weight of her words heavy with foreboding. "What do you think happened to her?" I asked, feeling the echoes of her fear resonate within me. "I don't know," Jacob said, turning the page. "But it seems she was tormented, much like we were." He continued to read, revealing more about Margaret's struggles. The entries detailed her increasing paranoia and fear, describing shadows that moved on their own and whispers that echoed through the halls. Each entry became darker, filled with frantic pleas for help and chilling revelations about her fellow neighbors who had vanished without a trace. "They say the house is cursed," Jacob read, his brow furrowing. "I must find a way to leave, but the door has been locked. I am afraid it is too late for me." "Jacob, this is horrifying," I whispered, my heart racing. "She knew something was wrong. We need to find out what happened to her." "There might be more," Jacob replied, his expression determined. "Let's keep looking." We dug deeper into the boxes, unearthing letters, photographs, and more diaries, each revealing fragments of lives interrupted. A photograph caught my eye, a faded black and white image of a group of people standing outside the house, smiling. I recognized Margaret among them, but what struck me was the shadowy figure lurking in the background, a darkness that seemed to stretch across the photo like an ominous presence. "Look at this," I said, holding it up for Jacob to see. "What do you think that is?" He leaned closer, squinting at the image. "It looks like a shadow, but it's not anyone in the group." As we examined the photo further, a sense of unease settled in my stomach. "It's like it was watching them, just like it watched us," I whispered, feeling the weight of history pressing down on me. "Maybe this is the key," Jacob suggested, pointing to the back of the photo where a date and the initials MJ were scrawled. "If we can find out who MJ was, it might lead us to more information about what happened here." I rummaged through the boxes again, looking for anything that could give us insight into MJ's identity. Just as I was about to give up hope, I stumbled upon a small, tattered envelope. Inside was a letter addressed to Margaret, written in an elegant script that felt oddly familiar. I opened it, my hands trembling slightly as I read aloud. "My dearest Margaret, I fear for your safety. The house is not what it seems. I have seen things that cannot be explained, and I worry you may become trapped like the others. Remember, you are stronger than the darkness that surrounds you. Trust in yourself and seek the truth." "That's it," Jacob exclaimed, his eyes lighting up. This person knew what was happening. We need to find out who they are. The pieces were falling into place, and with each discovery, the need to confront the past grew stronger. "Let's search for more letters or anything that might mention MJ," I urged, my mind racing with possibilities. Jacob nodded, his determination mirrored in my own. Together, we continued to sift through the remnants of lives once lived, each piece of information pulling us deeper into the house's sinister history. As I opened another box, I felt a chill race down my spine, a warning that something was watching us once more. I glanced around the attic, my heart pounding in my chest. "Do you feel that?" I whispered, dread pooling in my stomach. Jacob paused, his expression shifting from excitement to concern. "Yeah, it's like the air just changed." Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from the far end of the attic, causing us both to jump. I turned to see a dark shadow dart across the room, disappearing into the corner where the light barely reached. "Did you see that?" I gasped, my breath quickening. "We need to be careful," Jacob said, his voice steady as he brandished the flashlight, illuminating the corners of the room. "Let's stay focused. We can't let it distract us." I nodded, though fear threatened to overwhelm me. We continued our search, determined to uncover the truth behind the house and the sinister presence that loomed within its walls. The atmosphere in the attic had shifted, charged with a palpable tension that felt like a living thing. My heart raced as I cast furtive glances toward the shadows, the flickering light from our flashlight creating an unsettling dance of dark and light across the dusty floorboards. I could still feel the lingering unease from the shadow I had seen darting across the room, an entity that felt all too real and dangerously close. "Let's keep moving," Jacob urged, his voice low but resolute. He pointed to a stack of boxes in the corner, each one labeled in a hurried, shaky hand. "Those might be worth checking out." I followed him to the corner, my fingers trembling slightly as I reached for the first box. The lid creaked open, revealing a jumble of papers, photographs, and what looked like old toys. Remnants of lives once filled with laughter, now mere echoes of the past. As I sifted through the contents, a particular photo caught my eye. It depicted a family in front of the house, their faces frozen in time. But what struck me was the expression on the mother's face, a mix of joy and deep-seated fear, as if she sensed something was lurking just beyond the frame. "Jacob, come look at this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He leaned over my shoulder, peering at the photo. "Do you think they experienced something similar to what we did?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "Maybe," I replied, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. "We need to find out more about them. Their story might lead us to understand what's happening here." As I continued to search through the box, I came across a letter tucked away beneath a stack of brittle newspaper clippings. My heart raced as I pulled it out and began to read aloud. "To whoever finds this, know that we are not alone in this house. We feel the presence watching us, always lurking just out of sight. My children cry at night, claiming to see a dark figure by their window. I fear it is only a matter of time before it claims us. If you are reading this, I beg you to leave. Do not stay. You are in grave danger." The weight of her words crashed down on me, filling me with dread. "They were terrified," I whispered, glancing at Jacob. "Just like we are." Jacob nodded, his eyes wide as he processed the letter's implications. "We need to keep moving. If we can find the family's last name or any information about them, it might help us figure out what to do next." We quickly sorted through the remaining boxes, each one revealing a piece of the puzzle. But with every revelation came a growing sense of urgency. The whispers in the dark grew louder, and I could feel the unseen presence closing in, its chilling breath brushing against my neck. Suddenly, the floorboards creaked ominously beneath us, causing both of us to freeze. The air was thick with apprehension, and I felt as if we were being watched, scrutinized by unseen eyes. I exchanged a glance with Jacob, and without a word, we knew we had to face whatever was lurking in the shadows. "Let's check out the far end of the attic," Jacob suggested, his voice steady despite the fear evident in his eyes. "Maybe it's time we confront this thing instead of running from it." I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat a reminder of the terror we had faced thus far. "Okay," I agreed, trying to sound braver than I felt. As we moved toward the darker corner of the attic, the temperature dropped sharply, and I could see my breath fogging in the cold air. Shadows shifted and danced along the walls, and the scratching sound returned, soft at first, but steadily increasing in intensity. "We're not alone," Jacob whispered, his grip tightening around the flashlight. "Stay close to me," I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. We reached the corner where the shadows seemed to thicken, an oppressive weight hanging in the air. "I feel like we're being drawn in," Jacob murmured, his eyes darting around, "like it wants us to come closer." The scratching grew louder, echoing off the wooden beams above. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, willing myself to confront the darkness. "Show yourself," I called, my voice breaking the heavy silence. "What do you want from us?" In response, the air grew still, almost suffocating. The shadows flickered, and I could have sworn I saw a figure shift just beyond the reach of the flashlight. My heart raced as a voice whispered, barely audible, yet hauntingly clear, "You shouldn't have come here." Jacob's face paled, and he instinctively stepped back. "What was that?" he gasped, fear etched across his features. "I don't know," I said, my voice shaking. "But we can't let it intimidate us. We have to find out what it wants." "Maybe it's tied to the house's history," Jacob suggested, his gaze still fixed on the shadowy figure. "If we can understand its story, we might be able to break whatever hold it has over us." "Let's look for more clues," I said, rallying my courage. "There must be something in this attic that can help us." As we searched the darkened corners, a chill enveloped us, wrapping around our bodies like icy fingers. The scratching sound grew louder, almost frantic, and I could feel a presence behind us, watching, waiting. Suddenly, Jacob gasped. "Look!" He pointed to a small, dusty trunk that had been pushed against the wall, nearly hidden from view. "What if there's something inside?" I nodded, my heart racing as we approached the trunk. It was locked, but the rusted clasp looked weak, as if it could be pried open. "We can break it if we need to," I said, glancing back at the dark corners, feeling the urgency of our situation. As Jacob and I worked together to open the trunk, the scratching intensified, sounding almost like desperate claws scraping against wood. I felt a surge of panic, but we couldn't stop now. With a final shove, the clasp gave way, and the lid creaked open. Inside, we found a jumble of old papers, letters, and a dusty, worn-out journal. I reached for the journal, my fingers trembling as I flipped it open to the first page. "To whoever finds this, I beg you to listen to my warning. The house is cursed, and it seeks to trap those who dare to stay. I have witnessed things that defy explanation, things that haunt my every waking moment. Do not fall victim to its darkness. You are not safe here." The weight of the words pressed down on me, and I could feel the shadows closing in, threatening to consume us whole. The presence was no longer a whisper. It felt like a storm gathering, ready to unleash its fury. "Jacob, we need to leave," I shouted, my voice rising above the growing chaos. "Now!" But as I turned to make my escape, I felt an icy grip wrap around my arm, pulling me back into the depths of the attic. I screamed, fear surging through my veins as the shadows enveloped me, leaving me gasping for breath in the suffocating darkness. Panic surged through my veins as I was pulled deeper into the shadows, the icy grip tightening around my arm like a vice. My heart raced as I struggled against the unseen force, gasping for breath in the suffocating darkness. Jacob's frantic shouts echoed in my ears, but they felt distant, swallowed by the oppressive gloom. "Hang on, I'm coming," Jacob yelled, his voice a lifeline amid the chaos. I could hear him moving closer, but the shadows clung to me, dragging me down into an abyss of terror. With a surge of adrenaline, I reached for the journal, clutching it tightly to my chest, as if it were my only hope. The words inside promised a truth that could shatter the darkness, a truth that I desperately needed to uncover. In a moment of clarity, I realized that the journal might hold the key to my escape. "Let go of me," I shouted, my voice hoarse and raw as I fought against the grip of the shadows. "You can't keep me here." Just as the darkness threatened to pull me under completely, I felt a sudden warmth envelop me, as if a light was breaking through the suffocating veil. It was Jacob, charging into the depths of the attic, his flashlight illuminating the swirling shadows. "Get away from her," he shouted, swinging the beam of light in wide arcs. The shadows hissed and recoiled, releasing their hold on me just enough for me to break free. I stumbled backward, gasping for breath, and caught a glimpse of Jacob's determined face, his eyes blazing with fierce resolve. "Let's get out of here," he urged, grabbing my arm and pulling me toward the attic door. But as we moved, the shadows swirled around us, their whispers rising to a crescendo, threatening to drown out our voices. "Not so fast," a chilling voice echoed, reverberating off the walls like a sinister chant. "You think you can escape? You belong to us now." I could feel the weight of those words pressing down on me, and dread settled in my stomach. "Jacob, we can't let it take us. We need to break its hold," I shouted, the urgency of our situation igniting a fire within me. With newfound determination, I clutched the journal tightly and flipped through its pages, searching for answers. "There has to be something in here," I cried, desperation clawing at my throat. The words seemed to shimmer in the flashlight's glow, and I caught snippets of the previous owner's fears, an incantation, a warning, a plea for release. "This," I exclaimed, my finger landing on a passage that detailed a way to break the curse. "We need to read this out loud. It might weaken its hold." "Do it," Jacob urged, his voice a steady anchor in the swirling chaos. Taking a deep breath, I steadied my shaking hands and began to read the incantation aloud. "By the light of truth, I call upon the spirits that linger, the shadows that bind. Release your grip, let the past unwind." As the words filled the attic, a bright light began to emanate from the journal, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. The shadows writhed and shrieked, their forms contorting as if in agony. "Keep going," Jacob shouted, stepping closer to me, his unwavering presence lending me strength. "You can do this," I continued, my voice gaining confidence with every word. "Let the memories fade, the fear dissolve. I reclaim my light. I shall resolve." The shadows wailed in protest, a cacophony of anguish that shook the very foundations of the attic. I could feel the temperature dropping, the air thickening around us. "It's working," I exclaimed, hope surging within me. But just as I neared the final lines, the presence surged forward, a whirlwind of darkness intent on stopping me. I braced myself as I felt its icy breath against my neck, whispering the darkest of fears. "You can't escape. You'll never be free." With a final burst of determination, I pushed through the fear and finished the incantation. "I am free. I am whole. My spirit rises. No more control." As the last word left my lips, the light erupted from the journal, illuminating the entire attic with a blinding brilliance. The shadows recoiled, their forms unraveling like smoke in the wind. I felt the grip on my arm loosen, and in that moment, I was released. The oppressive atmosphere shattered, and I stumbled backward, collapsing into Jacob's arms. We both gasped, the weight of our fear lifting as the shadows dissolved into nothingness. "We did it," Jacob exclaimed, his voice filled with disbelief and relief. I looked around the attic, the air now light and clear, as if a storm had passed. "But what if it comes back?" I asked, my heart still racing. "We'll face it together," he replied, his grip firm and reassuring. "We know its secrets now. We won't let it win." We gathered our strength and made our way to the attic door, glancing back at the remnants of what had once been a place of fear. But now it felt different, cleansed, liberated. As we stepped out into the hallway, I felt the warmth of dawn creeping through the windows, the first rays of sunlight spilling into the house. The whispers of the past faded, leaving behind a sense of closure and peace. The morning light flooded through the windows, casting a warm glow over the remnants of the night's chaos. Jacob and I stood together in the living room, still reeling from our harrowing encounter in the attic. The shadows that had once threatened to engulf us were gone, but the echoes of their whispers lingered in my mind, haunting yet oddly comforting. It felt as though we had emerged from a nightmare into a world that, while bruised, was still beautiful. "What now?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. I felt as if I were waking from a dream, still unsure of what was real and what was a figment of my imagination. Jacob ran a hand through his hair, glancing around the room. "We need to report what happened," he said, determination flashing in his eyes. "This isn't over until everyone knows the truth about this house. We need to protect others from experiencing what we just did." Nodding, I felt a wave of agreement wash over me. "You're right. We can't let this secret fester, especially if there's a chance it could come back." After a quick breakfast, we gathered our things and headed out, hearts pounding with the weight of our mission. The sun had risen fully now, bathing the neighborhood in golden light. It felt surreal, almost as if the world was trying to heal along with us. As we walked to the local authorities, I felt a mix of fear and resolve. I knew that what we had experienced was extraordinary, and sharing our story would be vital in helping others understand the danger lurking within the shadows of the old house. When we arrived at the police station, we were met with skeptical glances from the officers at the front desk. "You're here about the old Dawson place?" one officer asked, eyebrow raised, clearly doubting the validity of our claims. "Yes," Jacob replied firmly. "We need to talk to someone about what we found there. It's serious." After some back and forth, we were ushered into a small interview room. The walls were bare, the only decoration a flickering fluorescent light that cast harsh shadows. My heart raced as I prepared to share our story, the words tumbling out in a rush. "We discovered something in the attic," I began, my voice shaking slightly. "There was a curse, or something dark. It tried to keep us trapped, but we found a journal that helped us break free." The officer listened, skepticism written all over his face. "A journal? A curse? You realize how this sounds, right?" he asked, crossing his arms. "I know it sounds insane," I admitted, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. "But we felt it, and we have to warn others. We can't let anyone else fall victim to whatever is happening there." Just then, another officer entered the room, his demeanor serious. "What's all this about curses?" he asked, directing his attention to us. Jacob leaned forward, urgency in his voice. "We were trapped by something in that house. It manipulated our minds, tried to make us feel hopeless. We have to take it seriously before someone else gets hurt." The new officer raised an eyebrow, but his expression softened as he noticed the fear in our eyes. "All right, let's take a closer look at what you're saying," he said, motioning for us to follow him. As we exited the station, I could feel a sense of hope blooming within me. Perhaps we could prevent others from facing the same fate we had. Jacob walked alongside me, his presence a steady reminder that I was not alone in this fight. When we arrived at the Dawson house, it loomed over us, a dark figure against the brightening sky. The dread from the night before clung to me, but I was determined to confront the past. I glanced at Jacob, who nodded, sharing in my resolve. We entered the house, and a chill ran down my spine as memories of the shadows and whispers flooded back. I took a deep breath and steeled myself. As we made our way to the attic, the air grew thicker, and I could feel the weight of the house pressing down on me. "Stay close," I whispered to Jacob. "Whatever is left in here, we need to face it together." The attic door creaked open, revealing the remnants of our battle with the darkness. The journal lay abandoned on the floor, its pages fluttering in the draft, as if beckoning us to approach. Jacob picked it up, his eyes scanning the words etched on the pages. "This is proof," he said quietly. "We need to keep it safe." With a nod, I took the journal from him and tucked it safely into my backpack. "Let's make sure it gets to the right people," I replied, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. As we stepped outside, sunlight bathed the house in warmth, illuminating the scars of the past. It felt as though the darkness was finally lifting, and with it, a newfound clarity. Over the next few weeks, We worked tirelessly to share our story with anyone who would listen. We spoke at local community meetings, sharing our experience with the Dawson house, warning others of the potential dangers that lurked within. As we spread the word, we discovered that we weren't alone in our experiences. Others came forward, sharing their own tales of strangeness and fear surrounding the house. Together, we began to piece together a history of the place, a legacy of darkness that had gone unnoticed for far too long. Our efforts culminated in a community meeting with local authorities, where we presented our findings and urged them to take action. The town began to see the house for what it was, more than just a dilapidated building. It was a vessel of fear and suffering that needed to be addressed. Eventually, the house was declared unsafe, and plans were set in motion for its demolition. As the wrecking crew prepared to take it down, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Standing alongside Jacob, I realized that we had not only freed ourselves but also others from the shackles of the past. The house that once held us captive was now being dismantled, piece by piece, its dark history fading into memory. With each swing of the wrecking ball, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. The shadows that had haunted my nights were finally being chased away, and a new chapter was beginning to unfold. As we watched the house crumble, I turned to Jacob, gratitude swelling in my heart. "Thank you for being there for me," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "I couldn't have done this without you." He smiled, a genuine warmth in his gaze. "We did this together. I'll always be here to face the darkness with you." With the sun shining bright overhead, I felt a sense of hope blooming within me. The future was no longer shrouded in shadows. It was filled with light and possibility. As we walked away from the ruins of the Dawson house, I took a deep breath, ready to embrace whatever came next. The past was behind us, but the journey of healing and discovery had only just begun. Together, we would face whatever lay ahead, hand in hand, our spirits unbroken. Don't forget to subscribe in the channel and like the video for more contents. There's something undeniably eerie about old houses, especially when you've lived in one your entire life. Ours, nestled at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, was a relic of a bygone era, its creaking floorboards and faded wallpaper whispering secrets of the past. I had always found comfort in its familiar corners, until that fateful afternoon when I stumbled upon something that would change everything. It was a Saturday, the kind of day where the sun shone brightly, yet the air carried a chill, hinting at the approach of autumn. I had just finished my homework and was looking for a distraction when I decided to explore the dusty attic. My parents rarely ventured up there, claiming it was too cluttered and filled with things best left forgotten. But curiosity had always been my greatest weakness. As I climbed the steep, narrow staircase leading to the attic, the air grew thick with dust. I switched on the light, illuminating the chaotic scene before me. Boxes stacked haphazardly, old furniture covered in white sheets, and a scattering of forgotten toys all lay in disarray. I felt like an archaeologist, uncovering layers of history buried under years of neglect. As I rummaged through a box labeled holiday decorations, I unearthed an old photo album, its leather cover cracked and worn. Flipping through the pages, I was captivated by faded snapshots of my family from decades ago, capturing smiles and moments long gone. But amid the joyous faces, one photograph caught my eye. It showed my house, but the landscape around it looked entirely different. The garden was vibrant, and in the background, there seemed to be a small structure partially hidden by overgrown trees. Intrigued, I decided to investigate further. I placed the album on a nearby table and began to sift through more boxes. Tucked away in a corner, I found a dusty old lantern, its glass cracked but still intact. I grabbed it, hoping it would illuminate whatever secrets awaited me below. After a few more minutes of digging, I came across an old map rolled tightly in a scroll. Unraveling it, I was astonished to discover that it depicted my property along with several adjoining plots. I traced my finger over the delicate lines, feeling an electric thrill when I noticed a small X marked near the corner of my backyard, a detail that had never caught my eye before. What could that be? I murmured to myself, excitement bubbling within me. Determined to find out, I made my way downstairs, the map tucked safely under my arm. I stepped into the backyard, the familiar sights of my childhood home transformed by the promise of a new adventure. The grass was overgrown, the garden beds overflowing with wildflowers, and the tall oak tree stood watch over it all, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. I reached the area where the X marked the spot, my heart racing as I scanned the ground for any signs of a hidden treasure. Suddenly, my foot hit something hard, sending a jolt through my body. I knelt down, brushing away the grass and dirt to reveal a small, weathered wooden hatch. Could this be it? I thought, adrenaline coursing through me. The latch was rusty, and it creaked ominously as I lifted it, revealing a dark, narrow tunnel descending into the earth. The air wafting up was stale, carrying an unrecognizable scent that made my skin prickle with unease. But I couldn't turn back now. The allure of discovery was far too powerful. I reached for the lantern, flicked the switch, and a warm glow flickered to life. The light illuminated the tunnel's entrance, revealing damp walls and scattered debris. I took a deep breath, steeling my nerves, and descended into the darkness, the hatch closing softly behind me. As I stepped into the tunnel, the ground beneath my feet felt uneven, the stones cool and slick. I ventured deeper, the beam of my lantern cutting through the oppressive darkness. Shadows danced along the walls, teasing me with hints of movement. With each step, the walls seemed to whisper secrets, stories of those who may have walked this path before me. The tunnel stretched on, twisting and turning, and a mix of excitement and trepidation filled my chest. What lay ahead? Was this forgotten passage just an old utility tunnel, or something more sinister? Just then, I heard it, a faint sound like the echo of a whisper carried on the wind. My heart raced. I paused, straining to listen, my breath hitching in my throat. It was faint but unmistakable, a voice calling from the depths of the tunnel. "Help me!" The sound reverberated in my mind, a haunting plea that made my skin crawl. "Help me!" It was faint yet urgent, compelling me to move deeper into the darkness. I hesitated, my instincts screaming to turn back, to escape the unsettling presence that lurked in the shadows. But curiosity, the same curiosity that had led me to this hidden passage, overpowered my fear. I took a step forward, the beam of my lantern flickering against the moist stone walls. As I advanced, the whisper grew louder, morphing into a series of disjointed words, as if someone were trying to communicate from a great distance. I strained to make out the sounds, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice shaky but determined. The whisper stopped, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. I felt a chill sweep through the tunnel, making the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. Just as I began to doubt my sanity, the voice returned, more insistent this time. "Help me find it." "Find what?" I asked, a mix of dread and intrigue flooding my senses. But there was no response, just the silence pressing in around me like a heavy fog. I took a deep breath, pushing aside the unease that coiled around my thoughts. This was a mystery, and I was determined to unravel it. Continuing down the tunnel, I noticed subtle changes in the walls. They were no longer smooth stones but rougher, as if someone had carved patterns into them. I ran my fingers along the surface, feeling grooves and markings that hinted at a forgotten history. Suddenly, my lantern flickered, and I stopped, heart racing. I shook it gently, and the light steadied, casting eerie shadows along the walls. The momentary darkness had felt alive, as if it were a creature waiting to pounce. Pressing forward, I felt a sudden chill sweep through the air, causing my breath to hang in front of me like a cloud of mist. It was then that I spotted something unusual on the ground, a small, weathered box half buried in the dirt. My instincts screamed at me to keep moving, to ignore the box and whatever it contained. But the mystery was too great to resist. I knelt down, the lantern illuminating the box's intricate carvings. It was made of dark wood, the surface polished to a sheen despite its age. My fingers traced the edges, and I felt a strange energy emanating from it, as if it were alive. The whispers in the tunnel grew louder, swirling around me like a tempest. Open it," they urged. With trembling hands, I unclasped the rusty latch, the sound echoing through the tunnel like a gunshot. The lid creaked open, and my heart raced with anticipation. Inside, I found a collection of old trinkets, a tarnished locket, a cracked mirror, and a few faded photographs. But one item caught my attention above all: a small, worn journal, its pages yellowed and fragile. I pulled it out, feeling the weight of its history in my hands. The whisper seemed to hush as I flipped through the pages, revealing neat handwriting that detailed the thoughts and experiences of its author. It was a diary, and as I read the first few entries, a chill ran down my spine. The entries spoke of secrets and fears, of a hidden truth buried deep within the earth beneath the very house I called home. The last entry, however, sent my heart plummeting. I fear I am being watched. If I do not return, know that I have found something I shouldn't have. A cold shiver of dread washed over me. Who had written this? What had they discovered? I glanced around, half expecting to see a figure lurking in the shadows. The whisper returned, echoing through the tunnel like a siren's call. Help me! I felt a pull, an undeniable urge to delve deeper into the tunnel and uncover the truth. But with each step, a growing sense of foreboding wrapped around me like a vice. The air felt thicker, almost suffocating, and the walls seemed to close in, whispering secrets I was not ready to hear. Help! Find it! The voice echoed again, more urgent this time. I took a deep breath, trying to quell my rising panic. What do you want me to find? I shouted into the darkness, my voice bouncing off the walls, only to be met with silence. It felt as if the tunnel itself were alive, breathing and shifting around me. I knew I couldn't turn back now. I was too far into this mystery to abandon it. But the more I discovered, the more the tension coiled in my gut. Clutching the diary tightly, I forged ahead, every instinct telling me to run, but my curiosity driving me forward. As I continued down the passage, the whispers transformed, swirling around me like a tempest, drowning out the sound of my own thoughts. Help! Find it! The darkness deepened, and I stepped further into the unknown. With the diary clutched tightly in my hands, I ventured deeper into the tunnel, each step echoing in the oppressive silence. The flickering lantern cast dancing shadows against the damp walls, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me, lurking just beyond the edges of the light. As I pressed on, the whispers intensified, swirling around me in a cacophony of urgency. Find it! Help! Find it! The words became a haunting chant, mingling with the faint sound of dripping water somewhere in the distance. My heart raced, caught between fear and an insatiable curiosity. What was it that I needed to find? My mind raced with questions, but one thought kept creeping back in. Was I meant to uncover a dark secret buried within these walls? The atmosphere felt heavy, charged with a sense of foreboding that sent chills racing down my spine. Suddenly, the ground beneath me shifted, a small tremor causing me to stumble. I caught myself against the rough stone wall, my breath hitching in my throat. I could feel the tunnel alive around me, pulsing with energy that was both exhilarating and terrifying. The journal's entries echoed in my mind, detailing fears and strange occurrences, but I hadn't yet grasped the full weight of its implications. I needed to learn more about the author, about the discoveries that had led them to hide this diary in the first place. The deeper I ventured, the more questions bubbled to the surface. As I rounded a bend in the tunnel, I was met with a small alcove. The light from my lantern illuminated what appeared to be an old stone altar, its surface covered in dust and debris. Scattered around the altar were small trinkets, more tarnished lockets, broken jewelry, and several faded photographs. But it was the sight of an old, rusted key that caught my attention, sitting atop the altar like a sentinel. Compelled, I reached for the key, my fingers brushing against the cold metal. The moment I touched it, a wave of energy coursed through me, the whispers crescendoing into a frenzied clamor. Find it! Unlock it! Help! My heart pounded in my chest as I pocketed the key. Whatever it opened, it felt crucial to unraveling the mystery that consumed this place. But where would I find the lock that matched? The diary offered little guidance, its pages filled with fragmented thoughts and fears, but no clear answers. Continuing my exploration, I turned my attention to the photographs scattered across the altar. I picked one up, squinting to see its faded image more clearly. It depicted a family, smiling faces against the backdrop of a house that looked eerily familiar. My own home. Confusion washed over me as I recognized the woman in the picture. She bore a striking resemblance to my mother. I flipped the photo over, and a name scrawled on the back made my heart skip a beat. Lila May, my mother's name. A shiver coursed through me as I realized the connection between my family and this hidden tunnel. What had she been involved in? As I examined more photographs, I noticed a recurring figure, a man lurking in the background of several images, his face obscured but his presence unsettling. Was he part of the story, or simply an innocent bystander? The whispers grew louder, and I could feel the weight of unseen eyes pressing in on me. It was as if the tunnel itself were urging me to make sense of what lay before me. I glanced around the alcove, searching for clues, for answers that could illuminate the shadows dancing in my mind. Suddenly, a low rumble reverberated through the tunnel, causing dust to fall from the ceiling. I felt panic surge within me. I had to leave, but before I could turn back, a gust of wind swept through the alcove, extinguishing my lantern and plunging me into darkness. In an instant, the whispering intensified, now swirling around me like a tempest. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I fought to remain calm. "Help me. Find it." The voice echoed in the void, resonating deep within me, mingling with my own racing thoughts. I fumbled for the key in my pocket, praying that whatever it unlocked would offer the answers I desperately sought. But where to go? In the pitch black, the only sound was my heart pounding in my ears and the unsettling whisper that now felt closer than ever. "Find it," the voice urged, almost desperate. I took a breath and steadied myself, focusing on the echoes of the tunnel. There had to be a direction, a way to escape this nightmarish ordeal. Suddenly, I remembered the diary. It felt heavy in my other hand, the pages whispering secrets waiting to be unearthed. With renewed determination, I retraced my steps back to the altar, instinct guiding me. My fingers brushed along the walls, searching for anything that felt out of place. I needed light. I had to illuminate the darkness, to shine a light on the secrets buried here. Just as my thoughts began to spiral, I caught sight of a faint glimmer in the distance. My heart raced as I moved toward it, hoping it would lead me to an exit, or perhaps a revelation. As I approached, the glimmer grew brighter, revealing a door partially ajar, its outline almost ethereal against the darkness. The whispers transformed into a single commanding voice. "Unlock it." I hesitated for a moment, a wave of doubt washing over me, but the pull was too strong to ignore. I took out the key, its cool metal reassuring against my palm. I stepped closer to the door, the whispers crescendoing into a deafening chorus, urging me onward. As I reached for the doorknob, I felt a surge of electricity course through my body, the air thick with anticipation. I inserted the key, and the lock clicked open with a satisfying turn. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door wide, stepping into the unknown, the echoes of the tunnel swirling around me. As I pushed the door open, a flood of cold air rushed past me, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something distinctly metallic. I stepped through the threshold, heart racing, ready to confront whatever lay beyond. The door creaked ominously behind me, closing with a soft thud that echoed in the vastness of the new space. The room was dimly lit by a single, flickering light bulb that hung from the ceiling, casting long shadows across the concrete walls. I blinked as my eyes adjusted to the gloom, taking in my surroundings. The air felt thick with tension, each breath tinged with the weight of the unknown. The small chamber was cluttered with old furniture covered in dust and cobwebs, remnants of lives once lived. A rusted filing cabinet stood against one wall, its drawers slightly ajar, while a battered old table in the center bore an assortment of dusty bottles and papers. There was an overwhelming sense of abandonment, as if time had frozen in this place, leaving behind only whispers of what had transpired. As I stepped further inside, I felt an inexplicable chill creep up my spine. It was then that I noticed the walls adorned with old photographs, their subjects blurred and faded. Each picture told a story, their glassy eyes seeming to follow my every movement. Among them, I spotted more images of my mother, Lila May, laughing in some distant past, surrounded by strangers whose faces sparked a flicker of recognition. But it was the last photo that caught my breath. A dark figure stood in the background, partially obscured, its eyes glowing with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I could hardly breathe as the memories flooded back. The late-night whispers, the feeling of being watched, the terror that had woven itself into the fabric of my childhood. The connection between this hidden room and my family's history was undeniable, and yet, it only deepened the mystery. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind me, snapping me from my reverie. I whipped around, heart racing, just in time to see the door swing open with a force that rattled the hinges. A tall, shadowy figure stood in the doorway, its features obscured by the darkness. Panic surged through me, and I stumbled backward, instinctively reaching for anything that could serve as a weapon. "Who's there?" I called, my voice trembling as I tried to project courage. The figure stepped forward, revealing a familiar silhouette. "Evelyn." The voice was low and gravelly, sending a wave of relief mixed with confusion crashing over me. It was Julian, my neighbor, the same man I had seen pacing outside my house, his eyes searching, always watching. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, a mixture of fear and anger flooding my senses. "You scared me." Julian raised his hands in a placating gesture, his expression serious. "I came looking for you. I thought you might have gone into the tunnel. This place is dangerous, and you shouldn't be here." "Dangerous?" I echoed, glancing back at the darkness of the room. "I'm already here, and I need to understand what's going on. My mother, she was connected to all of this." He stepped closer, casting a wary glance over his shoulder before locking eyes with me. "You have to listen to me, Evelyn. There are things in this tunnel, things that should stay buried. You don't know what you're getting yourself into." "But I need to know," I insisted, frustration bubbling to the surface. "There's a history here that I can't just ignore. My mother wrote in that diary, and I think it's leading me to something important." He hesitated, his gaze flickering to the photographs that adorned the walls. "Your mother, she was part of something darker than you realize. People disappeared, and she disappeared." I interrupted, feeling a chill wash over me. "What do you mean?" Julian took a deep breath, his expression softening. "There were whispers about rituals, about things that should not be disturbed. She tried to protect you from it, but the further you delve, the more danger you'll attract." The air thickened with tension as I processed his words. Was my mother involved in something sinister? Had her past intertwined with the shadows lurking in this tunnel? "Show me," I said, determination igniting within me. "If this place is connected to her, I have to understand what happened. You can't just leave me in the dark." Reluctantly, Julian nodded, a look of resignation crossing his face. "All right, but you have to promise me you'll be careful. Once you uncover the truth, there's no turning back." With a shared understanding, we stepped further into the room, the walls closing in around us. Julian began rummaging through the old filing cabinet, pulling out papers and dusty folders filled with names, dates, and cryptic notes. My heart raced as he handed me a yellowed sheet, covered in my mother's handwriting. "This was found in her belongings," he said. "It's a record of her findings, but it's incomplete. She was onto something, Evelyn." As I read the document, I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on me, urging me to unveil the secrets hidden in the shadows. My fingers trembled as I pieced together the fragmented story of my mother's life, her struggles against something that had threatened to consume her. Just as I began to grasp the gravity of what lay before me, the room shook with a sudden force. The ground trembled violently, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. Julian grabbed my arm, his eyes wide with alarm. "We need to get out of here now." Before I could respond, a deafening roar erupted from the tunnel, reverberating through the chamber like a monstrous heartbeat. Panic surged within me, and I knew that the shadows were awakening, stirred by my intrusion. We raced back toward the door, but as we reached the threshold, a dark figure loomed at the entrance, blocking our escape. Its presence radiated an energy so powerful that I felt it in my bones, an unmistakable chill that hinted at the malevolence hidden within. "Get back!" Julian shouted, pushing me behind him as the figure advanced, its form shifting and writhing in the flickering light. The whispers crescendoed into a deafening cacophony, and I could barely hear myself think. In that moment, I knew we had unleashed something we could not contain. The shadows were alive, and they were hungry for answers, for blood. The shadows coiled around us like living serpents, writhing and flickering at the edges of my vision. I stood frozen, fear anchoring me in place as Julian stepped forward, a fierce determination flashing in his eyes. "We need to confront it," he yelled, trying to rally our courage against the encroaching darkness. "We can't let it trap us here." I blinked, trying to shake off the paralysis gripping my limbs. The air crackled with tension, the atmosphere thick with an otherworldly energy that made my skin prickle. The figure loomed closer, its form shifting and morphing, as if the darkness itself was materializing into something sentient and malevolent. "Do you see it?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "What is it?" Julian's brow furrowed with concern. "It's not just a shadow. It's a manifestation of whatever your mother was investigating. It's drawn to you, Evelyn, and we need to figure out how to stop it." With every ounce of courage I could muster, I stepped beside him, clenching my fists as I met the figure's gaze. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice trembling with both fear and defiance. The darkness pulsed, and the whispers intensified, swirling around us like a storm. I couldn't make out individual words, but the cacophony felt like a warning, a chorus of voices warning us to turn back, to abandon this path. Julian's hand shot out, and he grasped my wrist tightly. "Stay focused. Whatever it is, it's feeding off your fear. We have to confront it head-on. Remember your mother's diary. There might be something in there that can help us." I nodded, heart racing, and we both turned back towards the room, the photographs glaring down at us like watchful sentinels. I scrambled to the table, fumbling for the diary I had found earlier, while Julian continued to face the dark figure, his eyes narrowed in determination. My fingers brushed the leather cover, and I pulled it toward me, flipping through the pages frantically. My heart raced as I scanned the familiar handwriting, searching for anything that could provide us with guidance or insight into this horrifying manifestation. "Evelyn!" Julian shouted, his voice strained. "It's coming closer." I could feel the temperature drop, an icy breath sweeping across my skin as the figure advanced, its shadowy fingers stretching toward us like tendrils of darkness. Panic surged through me, but I fought to focus on the diary, my mind racing. "Please," I muttered under my breath, "show me something." I turned another page, and my eyes landed on a passage that made my heart skip a beat. It spoke of a protective chant, one my mother had written down, a way to shield oneself from the darkness. With trembling hands, I read it aloud, the words spilling from my lips as if they had been waiting for this moment. "By light's embrace and shadows cast, I stand against what's come to pass. With heart unyielding and soul so bright, I bind you now, O fearsome night." The shadows shivered as the words left my mouth, a flicker of resistance pulsing through the air. Julian stepped closer, a fierce look in his eyes. "Keep going. Don't stop." The figure recoiled slightly, its form twisting in an erratic dance, as if the chant had struck a chord within its essence. My heart raced faster as I continued, channeling every ounce of determination I had. With courage strong and will of stone, I call upon the light I've known. I bind the dark and claim my right. Let not the shadows take my sight. With each word, I felt a surge of power coursing through me, an energy I had never known. The darkness writhed and howled, the whispers merging into a dissonant roar that threatened to drown us both. I could sense the struggle within the shadows, the fear they had for the light. Then, suddenly, the temperature in the room began to rise, the cold air retreating as if it were fleeing from my voice. I felt the shadows recede, wavering and flickering like candle flames in a gust of wind. The figure staggered back, its form flickering like a faulty light bulb, and I knew we were gaining ground. But just as victory seemed within our grasp, a powerful surge of energy shot through the room, knocking Julian and me off our feet. I hit the ground hard, gasping as pain shot through my side. The diary flew from my hands, its pages flapping wildly in the tumultuous wind that whipped through the chamber. "Evelyn," Julian shouted, his voice barely audible above the chaos. I turned to see him struggling against an unseen force, the darkness tightening around him like a noose. "Hold on," I cried, scrambling to my feet. The room felt like it was coming apart, the shadows battling against the light I had summoned. I had to save him. I rushed forward, my heart pounding as I grabbed the diary, feeling its weight in my hands. I remembered the last part of the chant, the words that could break the cycle of fear and darkness. By love and hope, I forged my way, banished the shadows, let light hold sway. I shouted, my voice rising above the tumult. The shadows recoiled again, twisting violently as if caught in a storm. Julian managed to break free from their grasp, stumbling toward me as the darkness began to dissolve. I felt a sense of hope swell within me, a light igniting in the depths of despair. Suddenly, with one last deafening roar, the figure erupted into a cloud of dark smoke, dissipating into the air like a wisp of fog. The room fell silent, the flickering light bulb steadying as a warm glow enveloped us, replacing the coldness that had threatened to consume us. "We did it," I gasped, turning to Julian, who was breathless and wide-eyed, his chest heaving from the encounter. But just as relief washed over us, I felt a chill race down my spine, a lingering presence still heavy in the air. My heart sank as I realized this wasn't over yet. "Is it really gone?" Julian asked, his voice a low murmur. I shook my head, glancing around the now quiet room, feeling the weight of unfinished business pressing on my chest. "No, it's not gone. I think it's just waiting for us to uncover the next layer of this mystery." And with that, I knew our journey had only just begun. The silence in the room was oppressive, a heavy blanket that smothered any sense of victory we might have felt. The remnants of the dark figures still lingered like a bad dream that refused to fade, and I could feel the anxiety curling in my stomach. Julian and I exchanged glances, each of us silently weighing the implications of our recent battle. "We need to find out what this is all about," Julian said, his brow furrowed with concern. "Your mom's diary had some clues, but it feels like there's so much more we haven't uncovered yet." I nodded, my mind racing with thoughts. "Maybe there's something in the attic," I suggested. "My mother always stored her old belongings there. She had a lot of books and papers. Perhaps something from her research could help us understand what we're dealing with." As we made our way back through the house, the familiar surroundings felt different. Shadows danced in the corners of my vision, and the very air seemed to hum with a quiet tension. I fought to ignore the unease crawling along my skin, reminding myself that I had faced the darkness once already. I could do it again. Reaching the attic door, I hesitated. The last time I had entered this space, I had been overwhelmed with fear. Now, with Julian by my side and a newfound sense of determination, I grasped the handle and pushed the door open. The attic was dimly lit, the only light filtering through a small window, casting an eerie glow on the dust motes floating in the air. Old furniture loomed in the shadows, cloaked in white sheets, resembling ghostly figures. The musty scent of forgotten memories enveloped us, and I felt a mix of nostalgia and dread wash over me. "Where do we even start?" Julian asked, stepping into the room and scanning the cluttered space. "I think I remember seeing some boxes in the corner," I replied, walking deeper into the attic. "My mom always kept her old journals there. If there's anything that could explain the shadow or the mystery of the tunnel, it might be in one of them." As we rummaged through the boxes, I uncovered an assortment of forgotten treasures. Old toys, dusty photo albums, and a stack of my mother's journals. Each one felt like a portal to a different time, and as I flipped through the pages, I was struck by the passion and intensity of her words. "Here," I exclaimed, pulling out a journal that looked older than the rest, its leather cover worn and cracked. "This one looks promising." We settled into a corner of the attic, the wooden floor creaking beneath us. The journal felt heavy in my hands as I opened it, revealing pages filled with my mother's elegant handwriting. The first few entries detailed her fascination with the paranormal, her quest for understanding what lay beyond the ordinary. "Listen to this," I said, reading aloud. "I have always felt a connection to the unseen world, a lingering presence that whispers in the shadows. I believe there are forces at play that we cannot comprehend, and I am determined to uncover the truth behind them." Julian leaned closer, captivated. "This is amazing." It sounded like she was really onto something. I turned the pages, feeling a mix of pride and sorrow. "Look here," I continued, my finger tracing the lines. "I have discovered a hidden tunnel beneath our house. It is a place of energy, a crossing point between our world and something darker. I feel compelled to explore it, but I sense a warning in my gut. It is not a place to be taken lightly." The words sent a shiver down my spine, the weight of her discovery settling heavily over us. "She found the tunnel," I murmured, piecing it together. "But she also felt something was wrong. That must be why she kept it a secret. Did she mention anything else about it?" Julian asked, his eyes wide with intrigue. I flipped through the pages, searching for more clues. My heart raced as I stumbled upon a section that seemed to contain sketches of the tunnel, along with notes and warnings about entities she had encountered. One drawing depicted a swirling mass of darkness, similar to what we had faced. "This," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "this looks like what we saw. She was trying to document it. Do you think she encountered it?" Julian questioned, concern etching his features. "I think she did, but she didn't just see it. She tried to understand it, to confront it. Look here," I pointed at a hastily scribbled note. "It feeds on fear, but there is a way to weaken it. By confronting one's own darkness and embracing the light, you can bind it. But beware, there may be a cost." "What kind of cost?" Julian asked, his tone laced with apprehension. I shook my head, dread pooling in my stomach. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's clear that my mother's quest for understanding came at a price." Just then, a sudden gust of wind swept through the attic, rattling the loose boards and sending shivers down my spine. I looked at Julian, a sense of unease creeping back in. "We need to go back to the tunnel," I said, determination flooding my veins. "If we want to understand what's happening, we have to confront whatever is down there. My mother left us these clues for a reason. We can't run from this anymore." He nodded, the resolve in his eyes mirroring my own. "Let's do it. Together." We gathered the journals and our courage, heading back down the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last, the house seeming to hum with anticipation. As we reached the entrance to the tunnel, I felt a familiar chill envelop us, as if the shadows were aware of our impending return. "Ready?" Julian asked, his voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling around us. "Ready," I replied, pushing down the fear that threatened to resurface. Together, we stepped into the darkness, the tunnel swallowing us whole. The oppressive silence of the tunnel enveloped us, a stark contrast to the fleeting moments of daylight we had left behind. I felt my heart pounding in rhythm with the echoes of our footsteps, the walls around us seeming to breathe with an ancient energy. Julian and I pressed forward, each step heavy with the weight of what we might uncover. As we ventured deeper, the narrow passageway twisted and turned, revealing a series of small chambers illuminated only by the dim light of our flashlights. The air grew colder, and a sense of dread began to creep into my bones, but I refused to let it consume me. My mother had faced this darkness, and I would not let her efforts go to waste. "This place feels alive," Julian murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, scanning the walls adorned with strange symbols that seemed to pulse and shift in the flickering light. "These markings, they look familiar," I said, trying to piece together my mother's notes. She mentioned them in her journal. "They're part of some ancient language, used to ward off evil." As we continued, the air became thicker, laden with an almost palpable tension. It felt as if we were being watched, the shadows stretching out like fingers, ready to ensnare us in their grasp. I could feel my pulse quickening, the anxiety clawing at my insides. "Let's check that chamber over there," I suggested, pointing to a larger opening just ahead. The walls were adorned with intricate carvings, resembling a story etched in stone. Inside, the chamber revealed a shocking sight. At its center stood an altar-like structure, made from what looked like dark stone, its surface etched with more of the same symbols we had seen in the tunnel. Candles flickered around the perimeter, their flames dancing in the draft as if alive. "Do you think?" Julian began, trailing off as he stepped closer. "Is this some kind of ritual space?" "Maybe," I replied, my voice shaking. "It looks like a place for sacrifices or some sort of dark magic." I felt a shiver run down my spine as I recalled my mother's notes about entities and their need for energy. As we examined the altar, I noticed a small, weathered box resting atop it, almost camouflaged in the shadows. My heart raced as I approached it, the air around it humming with an energy that felt both inviting and repelling. "Should we open it?" Julian asked, glancing between me and the box. I hesitated, remembering my mother's warning about the cost of confronting darkness. "It might be important," I finally said, steeling my resolve. "But we should be cautious." With trembling hands, I lifted the lid, revealing a collection of trinkets, each one dark and foreboding. There were small, twisted figures carved from wood, fragments of cloth that seemed to pulse with a strange energy, and an intricately designed amulet that caught my eye. "What is that?" Julian asked, pointing to the amulet. I carefully lifted it out of the box, feeling a rush of energy flow through my fingers. "It looks like some sort of talisman," I said, examining the intricate patterns etched into the metal. "It might protect us, or it could be a key to binding whatever is in this tunnel." "Let's take it," Julian urged, his voice filled with urgency. "We can't leave empty-handed, not after everything we've seen." I slipped the amulet into my pocket, feeling its weight as a reminder of our purpose. "We should keep searching," I said, glancing around the chamber. "There might be more clues about how to stop this." As we moved deeper into the chamber, the atmosphere shifted, a sudden chill wrapping around us. Shadows flickered at the edges of my vision, and I could feel the hair on the back of my neck prickling. "Did you feel that?" I whispered, glancing at Julian. "Yeah," he replied, his eyes wide with fear. "It's like something's watching us." Before I could respond, a low growl reverberated through the air, sending shockwaves of terror through my body. The shadows morphed, twisting into dark figures that loomed just beyond the reach of our flashlights. "Get ready," I shouted, gripping the amulet tightly in my hand. "We need to face this." The figures advanced, their forms coalescing into something recognizable, yet horrific. A distorted version of the shadow we had encountered before, but this time it was accompanied by smaller entities, their eyes glowing like embers in the dark. "Stay close," I yelled, heart racing as the lead shadow lunged forward, its dark tendrils reaching for us. Julian and I backed against the altar, my mind racing with thoughts of the amulet. "This is our chance," I shouted, raising it as if it could shield us from the impending attack. "We need to confront it." The lead shadow paused, its form flickering as it regarded the amulet. I felt the energy shift, a pull between the two forces as if they were locked in a battle for dominance. "Now!" Julian shouted, his voice breaking through my focus. "We can't hesitate." Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward, holding the amulet out in front of me. "You are not welcome here," I declared, my voice stronger than I felt. "We bind you to the darkness from which you came." The shadow hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty passing through its form. The smaller entities hesitated as well, and for a brief moment, the air crackled with energy. "Together," Julian shouted, stepping beside me. We both focused on the amulet, channeling our thoughts into it, urging it to bind the shadows. The darkness recoiled, a screeching sound reverberating through the chamber as if it were in pain. "I can feel it working," I yelled, adrenaline surging through my veins. "Don't stop." With a final surge of energy, I thrust the amulet forward, feeling its warmth envelop us. The shadows writhed in agony, their forms twisting and contorting as they were pulled back into the depths of darkness from which they emerged. "Hold on," Julian shouted as the ground trembled beneath us. With a blinding flash, the shadows vanished, leaving only silence in their wake. We stood there, breathless and shaken, the amulet still pulsing in my hand as if it held a heartbeat of its own. "It's over," I whispered, disbelief flooding my senses. But even as I spoke, I felt a twinge of uncertainty. The darkness might have retreated, but we had only scratched the surface of the mystery that surrounded us. "What do we do now?" Julian asked, looking around the chamber, still alert for any signs of danger. "We keep searching," I said, my voice steady despite the lingering fear. "There has to be more to this. If my mom left clues, we need to find them, together." We took a deep breath and moved deeper into the tunnel, determined to unravel the mystery that awaited us in the shadows. The tunnel shifted as we pressed deeper into its cold embrace, each step echoing with a mix of anticipation and dread. The air was thick with an electric tension, as if the very walls were holding their breath, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. With the amulet still warm in my pocket, I felt a surge of determination wash over me. We had faced the shadows before, and we could do it again. "Do you think they'll come back?" Julian asked, glancing nervously at the dark corners of the tunnel. "I don't know," I admitted, "but we need to be ready. My mom wouldn't have left those clues without a reason. There's something more down here, something we haven't uncovered yet." We navigated through narrow passages and larger chambers, each one filled with more unsettling symbols and remnants of rituals long forgotten. I could feel the weight of history pressing down on us, the darkness whispering its secrets as we moved deeper into its heart. Eventually, we entered a massive chamber unlike any we had seen before. The ceiling arched high above us, and the walls were lined with stone shelves filled with grotesque carvings and artifacts that pulsed with a dark energy. At the center stood a large stone pedestal, draped in tattered black cloth. "What is this place?" Julian breathed, stepping cautiously forward. "This must be the heart of whatever was down here," I said, scanning the room for any signs of life. "This is where the real magic happens." As we approached the pedestal, I felt an overwhelming sense of foreboding. The shadows danced at the edges of our vision, and the air thickened, charged with an energy that made my skin crawl. The cloth covering the pedestal began to shift as if a breeze were blowing through the chamber, though there was no wind. "Do you see that?" Julian pointed to the cloth, his eyes wide with fear. Before I could respond, the cloth flew off the pedestal, revealing a grotesque statue of a figure with elongated limbs and a face contorted in agony. Its eyes seemed to follow us, reflecting our fear back at us. "What the hell is that?" I gasped, taking a step back. I think it's a representation of whatever is haunting this place," Julian stammered. "It looks like it's been here for centuries." As I stepped closer, I noticed inscriptions carved into the pedestal, the same symbols we had seen in the tunnel. "These writings, they're instructions," I said, tracing the lines with my fingers. "They talk about binding rituals and the price of power." Just then, a low, guttural growl emanated from the statue, shaking the very ground beneath us. The shadows in the chamber began to coalesce, swirling around the statue, forming a dark figure that towered over us. "It's back!" Julian shouted, instinctively taking a step back. "Focus!" I yelled, gripping the amulet tightly. "We need to stand our ground." The shadowy figure lunged forward, its form shifting and twisting as it approached. I could feel the energy of the amulet pulsing, resonating with the power of the dark entity before us. "Together!" I shouted, and Julian nodded, fear replaced by determination. We raised the amulet, channeling our energy into it, aiming to bind the entity. The shadow hesitated, flickering as if unsure of our intentions. "You are not welcome here," I declared, my voice echoing through the chamber. "We bind you to the darkness from which you came." With every ounce of strength, we focused on the amulet, willing it to work. The shadows writhed, the entity's form distorting as it fought against our binding. "Hold it back," Julian urged, his voice strained. I could feel the energy of the chamber intensifying, the dark entity pushing against us, trying to break free. "I need you to believe," I shouted, my voice breaking through the chaos. The shadows enveloped us, threatening to pull us under, but we stood firm. Together, we focused on the amulet, channeling every bit of our energy into it. With a final surge of power, the amulet glowed brightly, a blinding light piercing through the darkness. The shadow let out a deafening scream, the sound echoing through the chamber as it was pulled back into the depths from which it emerged. I felt a rush of wind as the shadows dissipated, leaving only silence in their wake. We stood there, breathless, the weight of the moment crashing over us. Did we do it? Julian panted, looking around the chamber, half expecting the entity to return. I think so, I replied, my heart racing. But we can't let our guard down yet. There's still so much we don't know. As we collected ourselves, I noticed a glimmer at the base of the pedestal, a hidden compartment, slightly ajar. Look, I pointed, excitement bubbling up inside me. We approached cautiously, and I pried open the compartment, revealing a collection of ancient scrolls and a small, leather-bound book. These must be my mom's notes, I exclaimed, my heart racing. Julian leaned in closer, his eyes wide with curiosity. We need to see what's inside, he said, and I nodded, feeling a sense of urgency. As I carefully opened the book, I felt a pulse of energy emanating from its pages. The words seemed to glow with an otherworldly light, revealing my mother's writings, her struggles, her fears, and her determination to confront the darkness that had plagued our family for generations. This is it, I whispered, my heart pounding as I scanned the pages. This is the knowledge we need to stop this once and for all. But as I continued to read, a sense of dread washed over me. My mother's words revealed not only the rituals needed to confront the darkness, but also the immense cost that came with them. It would require sacrifice, the kind that could change everything. We have to prepare, I said, glancing at Julian. We're not done yet. This is just the beginning. The echoes of our earlier confrontation still reverberated through the tunnel as we stood in the dim light of the ancient chamber. The leather-bound book lay open in my hands, the pages filled with my mother's careful script. Each line pulled me deeper into her world, a world that seemed to balance on the precipice of darkness and hope. But as I read further, I realized that the truths hidden within the scrolls were as unnerving as the shadows that lurked in the tunnel. We need to go through this quickly, Julian urged, glancing nervously at the tunnel entrance, which felt much more ominous now. If there's a way to end this, we need to find it before it comes back. I nodded, biting my lip as I turned the pages. My mother had documented everything. The origins of the entity we had encountered, the rituals used to bind it, and the terrible costs associated with wielding such power. Here, I exclaimed, pointing to a passage that detailed a binding ritual. It explains how to reinforce the barrier between our world and whatever dark force is down here. Good, Julian said, leaning in closer. But what's the cost? There's always a catch. My heart sank as I read the next line. It requires a personal sacrifice, something of deep emotional value to the person performing the ritual. It could be a cherished memory or a beloved item. It doesn't specify what it must be, only that it has to be something that holds great significance. That's not good, Julian replied, his expression shifting from hope to concern. What if it's something we can't live without? I don't know, I whispered, the weight of my mother's words settling heavily on my shoulders. But it's the only way to protect ourselves and our home from this darkness. We exchanged anxious glances, the reality of our situation sinking in. The tunnel felt alive with danger, and the knowledge that we had to make a sacrifice loomed over us like a dark cloud. I can't let this thing hurt my family, I said, my voice resolute. If it means giving up something precious, then that's what I'll do. We can't let it win. I'll do it too, Julian added, his eyes fierce with determination. Whatever it takes to end this. Before I could respond, a chilling gust of wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing the flickering torchlight and plunging us into darkness. I gripped the book tightly, my pulse racing. Stay close, I whispered, trying to calm my racing heart. We need to find a way out of here. As we stumbled through the inky blackness, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The shadows seemed to pulse around us, whispering taunts that echoed in my mind. You can't escape me, a voice hissed, sending a shiver down my spine. You are already mine. I clutched the amulet in my pocket, its warmth a small comfort against the creeping dread. We're not yours, I shouted defiantly, my voice echoing off the stone walls. We're gonna end this. The voice laughed, a cruel sound that reverberated through the tunnel. You think you can stop me? You know nothing of the true cost of power. You will pay dearly for your arrogance. The darkness around us thickened, and I felt the shadows close in. We need to keep moving, I urged, pulling Julian along as I stumbled toward the tunnel entrance. But the voice continued to taunt us, swirling around us like a tempest. You're not leaving here. You belong to the shadows now, just like your mother. The mention of my mother sent a bolt of ice through my veins. No, you won't take us, I shouted, fueled by a sudden surge of anger. We finally reached the tunnel entrance, and I pushed forward, desperately searching for the light of day. As we emerged into the fresh air, I gasped, feeling the sun's rays wash over me. We made it, Julian exclaimed, his voice tinged with disbelief. Not yet, I replied, glancing back at the dark entrance. We still have to perform the ritual. We have to finish this before it finds us again. We hurried back to my house, our hearts pounding in sync. The weight of what lay ahead pressed down on me, but there was no turning back now. The ritual required preparation and focus, and I felt an urgent need to gather my strength. Once inside, I cleared a space on the floor, pushing aside furniture and clutter. The book lay open beside me, its ancient words ready to guide us. We need to gather what we're willing to sacrifice, I said, my voice trembling slightly. It has to be something meaningful. Julian nodded, his expression serious. I'll give up my old baseball glove. It reminds me of my childhood, but if it means ending this, then it's worth it. I smiled at him, grateful for his bravery. I'll use my mother's locket, I said, pulling it from my neck. It was her most prized possession, but she wouldn't want it to be the reason we're haunted. As we prepared for the ritual, the weight of our choices loomed large. With the locket and the glove set before us, we positioned ourselves in a circle, the book open between us. Are you ready? Julian asked, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying his apprehension. I took a deep breath, feeling the energy of the amulet thrumming in my pocket. Yes, we have to do this together. With our hands clasped, we began to chant the words from the book, our voices merging into a powerful incantation. The air around us shimmered with energy, and I could feel the darkness lurking, waiting for the moment to strike. As we chanted, I felt a deep connection to the sacrifice we were making. The memories tied to the locket and glove flooded my mind. Joyful moments, laughter, and love. But along with those memories came a sense of loss, and I could feel the shadows pressing against us, trying to break through. Keep going, Julian urged, his grip tightening around my hand. With a final surge of determination, we finished the incantation. The air crackled with energy, and I felt a force push against me, as if the shadows were trying to break free. Bind it, I shouted, pouring every ounce of energy into the amulet. Light erupted from it, filling the room and pushing back the darkness. The shadows writhed and screamed, and I felt the entity's anger vibrating in the air. Let go of us, I yelled, channeling my will into the light. With a final, blinding flash, the darkness dissipated, and the room fell silent. I gasped, panting as I looked at Julian. We did it, he breathed, disbelief washing over his face. But as I glanced around, I felt an unsettling emptiness in my chest. Did we? I asked, uncertainty creeping in. What if it's not over? The silence that enveloped the room was almost deafening. I could still feel the lingering remnants of the energy we had summoned, but the oppressive weight of darkness had lifted. However, the doubt gnawed at me, leaving an unsettling feeling in my stomach. Did we really do it? I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. The locket and glove lay before us, their significance resonating in the air. I reached out to touch my mother's locket, its surface warm against my fingertips. I think we did, Julian replied, his face a mask of cautious optimism. But we need to be careful. The shadows might not be gone for good. The thought hung heavy between us as I turned to the book, desperate for answers. The ancient text still held its secrets, and I scanned the pages for any mention of what came next. Let's just make sure we're safe, I suggested, my mind racing. We can set up some wards or protective symbols around the house. Julian nodded, pulling out his phone to look up various protective rituals. As he read, I began to arrange the locket and glove on a small altar I had created in the corner of the room. The sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the area with a golden glow, but I felt an uneasy chill creeping back into my bones. "Here," Julian said, breaking the silence as he handed me a piece of chalk. "We can draw protective symbols around the house. It might help keep whatever is out there at bay." I took the chalk, grateful for his calm demeanor. We moved through the house, drawing symbols on the walls and floors, reinforcing the barriers that separated our world from the dark entity that had haunted us. As I drew, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Each stroke of the chalk felt heavy, as if the shadows were lingering just out of sight. I glanced out the window, half expecting to see a pair of eyes peering back at me from the shadows. But there was nothing, just the empty street bathed in sunlight. Hours passed as we fortified the house, each protective symbol a silent promise to keep the darkness at bay. But as dusk began to settle, an unsettling sensation settled over me. The air grew thick, and the room felt charged with an energy I couldn't quite identify. "Julian," I called, my voice shaking. "Do you feel that?" He paused mid-drawing, looking up with wide eyes. "Yeah, it's like the air is heavy, like something's about to happen." Just as he spoke, a loud crash echoed from the direction of the basement. My heart raced, and I exchanged a terrified glance with Julian. "What was that?" I breathed, every instinct screaming at me to run. "I don't know, but we should check it out," Julian said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. We crept toward the basement door, each step feeling like a march toward our doom. The air thickened around us, and a sense of dread filled my heart as we reached the bottom of the stairs. The basement was dark and eerily quiet, the only sound the faint drip of water from the ceiling. I flipped the switch, and the overhead light flickered to life, illuminating the cluttered space. But as I scanned the room, my heart sank. On the far wall, a massive crack had formed, jagged and sinister, as if something had forced its way through the stone. A low growl echoed from the darkness beyond, sending shivers down my spine. "Did we really seal it?" I whispered, dread clawing at my insides. "I don't think so," Julian replied, taking a cautious step back. "We have to be careful. Whatever we did, it might have just angered it more." Before I could respond, the ground shook beneath us, and the crack widened, revealing a swirling mass of shadows. My breath caught in my throat as the entity from the tunnel began to emerge, its form shifting and twisting in an otherworldly dance. "No!" I shouted, the word escaping my lips as I instinctively stepped forward. "You won't take us again?" The entity paused, its dark tendrils swirling with an unsettling curiosity. "You think you can escape your fate?" it hissed, its voice a chorus of anguished whispers. "You've only delayed the inevitable." I could feel Julian's presence beside me, and together we took a stand. "We won't let you hurt anyone else," I shouted, my voice firm despite the fear threatening to consume me. Drawing on the energy of the amulet in my pocket, I stepped forward. "We bind you here, just as our ancestors did before us." Julian joined me, his own determination shining in his eyes. Together, we began to chant the words from the book, our voices rising above the growls of the entity. The air crackled with power, and I could feel the energy swirling around us, forming a protective barrier. But the shadows lashed out, trying to break through. "You cannot hold me," the entity screamed, its voice a cacophony of rage and despair. With each word we spoke, the light around us grew stronger, pushing back against the darkness. The entity writhed and screamed, its form flickering as if caught in a storm. "Focus," Julian urged, his voice steady. "We can do this." The crack in the wall glowed brighter, illuminating the room with an ethereal light. I felt the amulet pulse in my pocket, its warmth flooding through me as I poured my energy into the binding spell. Finally, with a final roar of defiance, the entity was sucked back into the crack, the shadows swirling violently before they were pulled into the depths of the stone wall. "Now!" I shouted, and we spoke the final words of the ritual, sealing the crack with a brilliant flash of light. The room fell silent, The oppressive darkness lifted as the last remnants of the entity faded away. I collapsed to the floor, breathing heavily, the adrenaline leaving my body in waves. "We did it," Julian breathed, his expression a mix of disbelief and relief. "We actually did it." But as I looked around the basement, the aftermath of our battle left a chilling sense of emptiness. The shadows might be gone for now, but the lingering echoes of fear remained. "We need to be vigilant," I warned, my voice shaking slightly. "We can't let our guard down. This isn't over. The shadows might return in another form." Julian nodded, his eyes serious. "We'll find a way to protect ourselves. We have each other, and we'll face whatever comes next together." As we climbed back upstairs, I felt a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. The shadows had tested us, but we had prevailed. Together, we had faced our fears and emerged stronger. In that moment, I knew that whatever lay ahead, we would confront it together. The darkness may have lingered, but the light within us was more powerful than any shadow. And as I looked out into the fading daylight, I felt a renewed sense of determination. We would build a life free from fear, ready to face whatever challenges awaited us. Don't forget to subscribe in the channel and like the video for more contents. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the cluttered room of Jenna, a vibrant young artist with a wild imagination. The day had been unremarkable, filled with the routine of painting and sketching, yet something in the air felt different that evening. Perhaps it was the heavy humidity or the way the light dimmed unnaturally as darkness crept in. Jenna had always been a dreamer, her head often lost in whimsical thoughts as she painted vibrant landscapes and fantastical creatures. Her small studio apartment was a kaleidoscope of color, a reflection of her inner world, filled with unfinished canvases, paintbrushes, and art supplies scattered haphazardly. However, amidst the creative chaos, there was one item that stood out: a large, ornate mirror that had belonged to her grandmother. Its antique frame was intricately carved, with swirling patterns that seemed to dance in the dim light. As Jenna prepared to wrap up her day, she glanced at the mirror, an act she had performed countless times before. But this time, she felt a chill running down her spine. The mirror's surface appeared foggy, like a window obscured by mist, and when she stepped closer, she was met with an unsettling sight. Where her reflection should have been, there was only an empty void. Panic coursed through her veins as she blinked, hoping to dispel the eerie illusion. She leaned in closer, searching for her familiar face, but all she found was darkness staring back at her. It was as if the mirror was mocking her, challenging her very existence. "Okay, this is ridiculous," she muttered to herself, stepping back and shaking her head. Jenna had always believed in the whimsical and surreal, but this felt too far removed from reality. She reached out to touch the glass, half expecting it to feel warm, alive, like her art. Instead, it was cold and unyielding. Her heart raced as she recalled stories her grandmother used to tell, tales of spirits and reflections that held secrets of the past. Jenna had always dismissed them as fanciful folklore, but now, standing before the mirror, she felt a strange connection to those stories. Was it possible that something sinister lurked within its depths? Shaking off the fear, she decided to investigate. Perhaps it was simply a trick of the light, an issue with the glass. She turned on the overhead light, illuminating the room in a soft glow. The mirror remained dark, an abyss that seemed to swallow her image whole. With each passing moment, unease settled in her stomach like a heavy stone. Determined to uncover the truth, Jenna rummaged through her grandmother's old journals, which she had kept in a dusty box in the corner of the room. Flipping through the yellowed pages, she searched for any mention of the mirror. As she read, she discovered snippets of her grandmother's life. An artist, a dreamer, much like Jenna. But buried within the pages were whispers of secrets too unsettling to ignore. In the flickering candlelight, she found a passage that caught her attention. The mirror reflects not just the physical, but the unseen, the hidden truths of the soul. Be cautious of what lies behind the glass, for it may not always be what it seems. A shiver ran through her as she realized the warning her grandmother had left behind. Just as she began to comprehend the gravity of her findings, a gust of wind rattled the window, and Jenna felt a presence, a whispering breath against her skin. The air thickened, and she could hear it clearly now, a soft, almost melodic voice emanating from the mirror. "Come closer," it beckoned, luring her into its dark embrace. Jenna hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to run, yet something deeper compelled her to approach. What if this was her chance to uncover a hidden world, to connect with the mysteries of her family's past? With a deep breath, she stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. The moment she drew near, the mirror flickered, and for a brief instant, she caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow darting across the glass. The reflection, or lack thereof, was no longer just an empty void. It felt like a doorway to another realm, one that was both enticing and terrifying. "Don't be afraid," the voice urged, but the warning echoes of her grandmother's words still lingered in her mind. Jenna stood frozen, caught in a web of curiosity and dread, her world about to change forever. What awaited her on the other side of the mirror? Jenna's heart raced as she stood before the mirror, the cold glass pulsating with a life of its own. The enticing voice beckoned her closer, weaving an invisible thread that pulled her toward the depths of the reflection. She could feel the chill radiating from it, the air thickening around her as she hesitated, caught between the allure of the unknown and the warnings that echoed in her mind. "Don't be afraid," it urged again, this time with a soothing tone that sent an involuntary shiver down her spine. The shadows within the mirror swirled like smoke, dancing just beyond her reach, and for a moment, Jenna felt a strange sense of belonging. It was as if the darkness recognized her, resonating with something deep within her soul. Summoning every ounce of courage, Jenna leaned in closer, her breath fogging the surface of the glass. "What do you want?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the thrumming silence of the room. She was met with a soft chuckle that sent a wave of goosebumps cascading over her skin. "I want to show you the truth, Jenna," the voice replied, almost teasing. "The truth hidden in the shadows, waiting to be discovered." "What truth?" she pressed, her curiosity igniting a flicker of bravery. As she gazed deeper into the glass, the shadows began to take shape, morphing into fleeting images, scenes of her life, moments she had cherished and forgotten. She watched as her childhood self, full of laughter and innocence, played in the backyard, the sun illuminating her joy. But with each passing moment, the images grew darker, revealing glimpses of pain and sorrow she had buried deep within. "Why are you showing me this?" Jenna asked, a tremor of fear creeping into her voice. "What do you want from me?" "Everything has a price, dear one," the voice replied, laced with an eerie calm. "To understand the truth, you must confront the shadows of your past. Only then can you embrace the light of your future." The room seemed to darken as the shadows swirled more violently within the mirror, a tempest of emotions swirling in the depths. Images of her grandmother flashed before her eyes, her gentle smile fading into a grimace of sorrow, as if warning Jenna of the danger that lay ahead. The memories were bittersweet, tugging at her heartstrings, igniting a fire of unresolved feelings she had long suppressed. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the room, jolting Jenna from her trance. The window rattled violently, and she spun around, her heart pounding. The evening had turned pitch black, the darkness pressing against the glass like a living entity. Panic surged within her as she turned back to the mirror, desperate for answers. "What is happening?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "Why is this happening to me?" "You have called upon the shadows," the voice whispered, its tone low and foreboding. "And now they will answer." Before she could process the implications of those words, the mirror flickered violently, and Jenna's heart sank. The surface warped, rippling like water disturbed by a stone. She took a step back, dread pooling in her stomach, and the air crackled with electricity. Then, suddenly, the glass shattered, sending shards flying across the room. Jenna gasped, instinctively raising her arms to shield her face from the dangerous rain of splintered reflections. The air filled with the sound of glass crashing to the floor, and she stumbled backward, her heart racing as panic overtook her senses. But then, through the chaos, she noticed something, a figure emerging from the jagged remnants of the mirror. The shadows coalesced, forming a silhouette that began to solidify, drawing closer to her with an ethereal grace. The figure was tall, draped in a dark cloak that billowed as if caught in a breeze that didn't exist. Jenna's breath hitched in her throat as she recognized the familiar features of her grandmother, though they were obscured by darkness and sorrow. "Grandma," she whispered, disbelief flooding her senses. "Jenna, my dear," the figure spoke, her voice echoing with a haunting familiarity. "You must listen carefully. The shadows are not merely memories. They are warnings. You have a gift, but with it comes a burden. Why didn't you tell me?" Jenna felt tears brimming in her eyes. "Why didn't you warn me about this mirror?" "I tried," her grandmother replied, sorrow etching deeper lines into her ghostly visage. "But the shadows have a way of hiding the truth. You must face them to break the cycle." "What cycle?" Jenna asked, fear threading through her words. "The cycle of silence and secrets. The family's past is entwined with the shadows you see. To move forward, you must unravel the truth behind the mirror. Only then can you find peace." Before Jenna could ask more, her grandmother's figure began to fade, dissipating into the darkness as if it had never been there at all. Panic rose within Jenna as she reached out, desperate to hold onto the fleeting specter. "No, don't go," she cried, but the shadows swallowed her whole, leaving Jenna alone in the dim light of her studio. Silence enveloped the room, leaving Jenna breathless and trembling. The shards of the mirror lay scattered across the floor, each one reflecting a piece of her shattered reality. The weight of her grandmother's words settled heavily on her shoulders, and she knew she had no choice but to confront the shadows that haunted her family's past. Steeling herself, Jenna took a deep breath and began to gather the fragments of the broken mirror, feeling a sense of resolve build within her. She would uncover the truth, no matter how deeply it was buried. But as she knelt to collect the shards, a chilling thought crossed her mind. What if the shadows were not just remnants of the past, but something far more sinister, waiting to ensnare her in their web of darkness? As Jenna carefully gathered the shards of the shattered mirror, she felt a mixture of dread and determination swirling within her. Each glinting piece of glass reflected fragments of her reality, the jagged edges echoing the turmoil brewing in her mind. She could still hear her grandmother's voice whispering in her ears, urging her to confront the shadows and unearth the truths buried beneath years of silence and secrets. With each shard she collected, memories surged back, moments spent in her grandmother's warm embrace, tales of the past told around the fireplace, and the unsettling stories of family tragedies that were often brushed aside. Jenna had always sensed something deeper lurking beneath those tales, something that had been left unspoken, hidden behind layers of protection and fear. She took a moment to steady her breathing, reminding herself of the resolve she had felt moments before. The mirror may have shattered, but it was also a portal, a gateway to the secrets waiting to be revealed. Gathering the last of the shards, she laid them out on the floor, forming a fractured mosaic of her past. The once familiar reflections now showed her distorted images, warped versions of the life she had known. Shadows danced in the corners, beckoning her to look closer. With her heart racing, Jenna decided it was time to dig deeper into her family history. She had to know what lurked in the corners of her mind, in the dark corners of her grandmother's stories. Later that evening, she sat at her grandmother's old wooden desk, an heirloom filled with memories of countless letters, diaries, and keepsakes. She had always found comfort in the way her grandmother meticulously organized her life. Every item had its place, every memory carefully cataloged. Jenna began to rummage through the desk drawers, her fingers brushing over yellowed papers, fragile photographs, and the faint scent of lavender that lingered in the wood. Her heart pounded with anticipation as she pulled out an old, leather-bound journal. It was thick, its pages worn and frayed, and Jenna immediately recognized it as her grandmother's diary. She felt a shiver of excitement as she opened it, the faint smell of musty paper wafting up to greet her. The ink had faded in places, but the words were still legible, each stroke carrying the weight of her grandmother's thoughts and emotions. As she flipped through the pages, Jenna's breath hitched at the entries detailing her grandmother's life, filled with joys and sorrows, triumphs and failures. But what struck her most were the entries that hinted at something darker, a recurring theme of shadows, whispers, and strange occurrences. Her grandmother had described nights when she felt watched, times when the mirror in her own room seemed to reflect more than just her appearance. The unsettling stories of family legends flooded back, tales of ancestors who had vanished, leaving behind nothing but questions. Jenna, one entry read, "There are things in this world that should remain hidden. The shadows know your name, and they will come for you if you don't tread carefully." The words chilled Jenna to the bone. She flipped to another page, eager to discover more. "The mirror has eyes, Jenna," her grandmother had written, "and those eyes see beyond the veil. If you hear whispers, heed them. They may be the only guide you have." With each revelation, Jenna felt a mix of fear and determination. It was as if her grandmother had foreseen this moment, anticipating Jenna's need for guidance. She scribbled down notes, her heart racing as she pieced together the fragments of her family's history, feeling an undeniable connection to the past. Suddenly, her phone buzzed on the desk, jolting her from her thoughts. She glanced at the screen and saw a message from her friend, Clara, inviting her out for a movie. Jenna hesitated, torn between the mundane world outside and the haunting truths that demanded her attention. With a sigh, she decided to accept the invitation. Sometimes, stepping away from the shadows was necessary, even if just for a moment. Maybe a night out would help clear her head and give her the strength to face whatever lay ahead. After a quick change into a comfortable outfit, Jenna locked up her house, taking one last glance at the desk where the diary lay open, its pages filled with her grandmother's words. The shadows might be waiting, but she had made a promise to herself. She would return and confront the darkness. The night was cool, and the streetlights flickered overhead as Jenna made her way to Clara's car. Her friend greeted her with a bright smile, and Jenna tried to match her enthusiasm, pushing aside the weight of the diary and the revelation she had uncovered. During the movie, however, her mind wandered back to her grandmother's words. Shadows danced in the corners of her mind, whispering secrets and tugging at her curiosity. Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that the night was more than just a distraction. Something was waiting for her, something that would require her to confront the fears she had suppressed for so long. As they left the theater, Jenna felt a growing unease. The moon hung high in the sky, illuminating the streets in a silvery glow. She glanced over her shoulder, feeling a chill run down her spine as she noticed a figure standing in the distance, partially obscured by shadows. Her heart raced, instinctively reminding her of her grandmother's warnings about being watched. "Are you okay?" Clara asked, noticing Jenna's hesitation. "Yeah, just a little tired," Jenna replied, forcing a smile as they continued down the sidewalk. But as they walked, the feeling of being watched intensified. Jenna stole another glance over her shoulder, but the figure had vanished, swallowed by the night. When they finally reached Jenna's house, she took a deep breath, the familiar scent of lavender greeting her as she stepped inside. The weight of the diary still lingered in her mind, and she felt the pull of the shadows once more. With Clara still in the hallway, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that she was being drawn back to the mirror. "Hey, do you want to come in for a bit?" she offered, wanting the comfort of friendship as she faced whatever awaited her. "Sure," Clara replied, stepping inside and glancing around. "What's up? You seem a little off tonight." Jenna hesitated, glancing at the mirror that loomed ominously in the hallway. "Just some family stuff," she finally said, hoping her friend wouldn't pry too much. As they settled onto the couch, Jenna found herself sharing bits and pieces of her grandmother's stories, feeling the weight of her family's past lift slightly with each word. Clara listened intently, offering her thoughts and encouraging Jenna to embrace the memories instead of fearing them. But as the night wore on, Jenna's eyes kept drifting back to the mirror, the shadows in the glass growing darker, swirling like a storm waiting to break. She could feel a pull, a quiet urging to confront the fears that threatened to consume her. Finally, with a racing heart, she excused herself. "I'll be right back," Jenna said, her voice barely above a whisper. She stood before the mirror, the fragments of glass glimmering like stars against the darkness of her thoughts. "Come with me," she whispered to Clara, her heart pounding in her chest. "I need to show you something." Clara hesitated but followed. Curiosity piqued. Jenna took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever lay ahead. "Look," she said, pointing to the shards on the floor. This is where it all began. As they stood before the shattered mirror, Jenna felt the weight of her grandmother's legacy pressing down on her. "We need to understand what this all means. The shadows, they're not just a part of my past. They're part of my story." Clara nodded, her brow furrowed with concern. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Jenna met her friend's gaze, feeling the resolve within her strengthen. "I have to be. I need to know the truth." Together, they knelt on the floor, surrounded by the shards of the broken mirror. Jenna could feel the air thickening with anticipation, the shadows whispering secrets she had yet to uncover. But she knew that she wasn't alone. Clara was by her side, ready to face whatever darkness awaited them. As they prepared to dive deeper into the mysteries of Jenna's past, a sudden chill swept through the room. The lights flickered, and the shadows surged forward, hungry for the secrets hidden within the fragments of the shattered mirror. Jenna's heart raced as she felt the weight of the unknown bearing down upon her, a tide of shadows ready to consume everything in their path. But she would not back down. She had come too far, and the truth awaited just beyond the veil. Jenna's heart raced as she and Clara knelt before the shards of the shattered mirror, the air around them thick with a sense of foreboding. It was as if the fragments were alive, whispering secrets just beyond the edge of her understanding. The shadows in the room deepened, creating an atmosphere heavy with unspoken fears and long-buried truths. "Are you ready for this?" Clara asked, her voice trembling slightly as she glanced at the shards. The edges glinted in the dim light, casting eerie reflections that danced along the walls. Jenna took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I have to be. This is my family's legacy, and I can't let fear dictate my life anymore." As they leaned closer, Jenna began to touch the shards delicately, careful of the jagged edges. Each piece felt like a connection to her past, a link to the stories her grandmother had told her. She imagined the faces and places described in the diary, and it fueled her determination to uncover the hidden truths. "Look at this one," Jenna said, picking up a piece that caught the light. "It's larger than the others and seems to have some kind of etching on it." She held it up, squinting to see the faint lines carved into the glass. Clara leaned in closer, curiosity piqued. "It looks like writing. Can you make it out?" "Not really. It's too faint," Jenna replied, her heart pounding with excitement. "But it feels important. Maybe it's a clue." They continued to sift through the shards, searching for more pieces that might hold significance. Each reflection warped their images, distorting their features in unsettling ways. Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, lurking just beyond the threshold of the mirror's surface. "Do you feel that?" Clara asked suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. "What?" Jenna replied, glancing at her friend. "Like, there's a presence. It's almost suffocating." Clara looked uneasy, glancing around the dimly lit room, as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. Jenna nodded, her pulse quickening. "Yeah, I feel it too. But we can't stop now. We need to figure this out." Suddenly, a soft whisper echoed in the room, sending a shiver down Jenna's spine. It was indistinct, but felt like a call, familiar yet haunting. "Jenna, did you hear that?" Clara's eyes widened as she clutched Jenna's arm. "Yeah," Jenna replied, breathless. It came from the mirror. As they leaned in closer, the whispers grew louder, forming a soft chorus of voices that seemed to resonate from the depths of the shards. Each word was muffled, almost as if they were trapped beneath a heavy layer of darkness, begging to be set free. "Can you make out what they're saying?" Clara asked, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and curiosity. "I think," Jenna started, straining to listen. "It sounds like names and dates. Maybe it's a list," Clara suggested. "A list of those who have been affected by the shadows?" Jenna nodded, feeling an urgency build within her. "We have to find out what they're saying." Taking a deep breath, she pressed her ear closer to the shards, and Clara followed suit. The whispers enveloped them, wrapping around their minds like a fog. Jenna strained to decipher the murmurs, her heart racing as snippets of words began to emerge. "Help lost, find shadows, beware." Jenna's breath caught in her throat. What does it mean? Why are they saying these things? I don't know, Clara whispered back, her voice quaking with fear. But we have to find out. This isn't just about your family anymore. The shadows around them pulsed, and the air grew colder. Jenna felt a wave of dread wash over her. Maybe we shouldn't have messed with this. What if we're waking something that should stay asleep? Just as the thought crossed her mind, a sudden crash echoed from the hallway, startling both girls. They turned, hearts pounding, and Jenna instinctively stepped in front of Clara, her body tense with anticipation. What was that? Clara gasped, eyes wide. I don't know, Jenna replied, voice trembling. But we should check it out. They carefully rose to their feet, eyes darting between the shattered glass and the darkened hallway beyond. The shadows seemed to stretch and contort as they moved cautiously toward the source of the noise. Jenna's pulse quickened as they reached the hallway, every creak of the floorboards beneath their feet amplifying the tension in the air. The house was silent, save for the distant sound of the wind howling outside, and Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting just around the corner. As they approached the end of the hallway, Jenna felt a chill run down her spine. Stay close to me, she whispered to Clara, who nodded, her eyes scanning their surroundings. When they reached the living room, Jenna's breath caught in her throat. The window was wide open, curtains billowing like ghostly figures in the wind. The source of the crash was evident. Her grandmother's old lamp lay shattered on the floor, its bulb flickering erratically. What happened? Clara asked, stepping cautiously around the broken pieces. I don't know, Jenna murmured, feeling a strange mixture of fear and curiosity. But it's almost as if something was trying to get in. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed from behind them, and they turned in unison. The mirror in the hallway had shifted, the shards quivering as if they had a life of their own. Jenna's heart raced as she realized the whispers had grown louder, now a cacophony of voices. Jenna, Clara, they cried out in unison, their voices intertwining with the growing chaos around them. Run, Jenna shouted, grabbing Clara's hand and bolting back toward the safety of the living room. They stumbled over the remnants of the lamp, narrowly avoiding the jagged pieces as they made their way toward the front door. The shadows followed, a swirling mass of darkness that seemed to reach out for them. Jenna felt a surge of panic, urging her to escape whatever entity had awakened within the mirror. As they burst through the front door, the night air hit them like a cold slap. They ran down the porch steps, hearts pounding in their chests as they fled into the open street. Breathing heavily, Jenna glanced back at the house, the shadows now swirling in the windows like a tempest, and she could hear the whispers still calling her name. What was that? Clara gasped, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. I don't know, Jenna replied, struggling to steady her breathing. But we need to get help. We can't face this alone. They hurried down the street, urgency propelling them forward. The night felt charged, the air thick with tension and uncertainty as they sought refuge in the nearest neighborhood cafe, a small haven filled with warm lights and friendly chatter. As they settled into a booth, Jenna's heart still raced. What do we do now? Clara asked, her voice shaky. Jenna's mind whirled with possibilities. We need to find someone who understands this, someone who knows about the mirror and the whispers. Like who? Clara replied, raising an eyebrow. I've heard of a local historian who specializes in family legacies and folklore. Maybe she can help us make sense of what's happening, Jenna suggested, determination seeping back into her voice. Then let's find her, Clara replied, her courage rekindling. As they sat in the cafe, surrounded by the warmth of laughter and conversation, Jenna felt a sense of purpose bloom within her. They would not allow the shadows to control their fate. Together, they would uncover the truth behind the whispers, the mirror, and the legacy that connected them all. But as Jenna looked out into the night, she couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were still watching, waiting for their moment to strike again. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she knew deep down that she had to face the darkness, not just for herself, but for her family and all the souls entwined in their shared history. Let's go home, Jenna finally said, her voice steady. We need to gather our resources and prepare for what's to come. The truth is waiting, and we'll face it together. As they left the cafe and stepped back into the night, Jenna felt the weight of the shadows pressing behind her, but with Clara by her side, she was ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The battle for her family's legacy had only just begun. The night air was crisp as Jenna and Clara made their way through the dimly lit streets, each step echoing with the urgency of their mission. Their breaths were visible in the cold, forming fleeting clouds that vanished into the darkness, just like their hopes of escaping the shadows that loomed behind them. "Are you sure about this, historian?" Clara asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "What if she doesn't believe us?" "We don't have a choice," Jenna replied, her mind racing. "The whispers are getting stronger. I can feel it. We need answers." As they approached the small, brick building where the historian was rumored to live, a shiver ran down Jenna's spine. The place had an old-world charm, but it also carried an eerie aura, as if secrets were etched into the very walls. "Do you think she'll be awake at this hour?" Clara asked, glancing at the dimly lit windows. "I hope so," Jenna replied, stepping closer to the door. "It's worth a try." With a deep breath, she knocked gently, the sound echoing through the stillness of the night. Moments later, a flicker of light appeared behind the curtains, and Jenna's heart raced. The door creaked open, revealing a woman in her 60s with sharp features and intense green eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness. "What brings you here at this hour?" she asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and caution. "Ms. Hargrove," Jenna said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need your help. It's urgent." Ms. Hargrove raised an eyebrow, but stepped aside to let them in. "Come in then. But I warn you, I don't deal with fanciful tales lightly." Jenna and Clara exchanged a quick glance before stepping inside. The room was filled with shelves of books, scrolls, and artifacts, all steeped in history. An old chandelier flickered above, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. "Sit down," Miss Hargrove instructed, gesturing to a small table cluttered with ancient texts. "Now, what is this about a mirror and whispers?" Jenna took a deep breath, recounting the events that had unfolded since she first discovered the diary. Clara chimed in, adding details about the strange occurrences and the chilling whispers they had experienced. As they spoke, Miss Hargrove listened intently, her expression shifting from skepticism to intrigue. "Interesting," she said once they finished. "Mirrors are often thought to be portals, gateways to other realms. They can reflect not only our images, but also energies that linger. It's not uncommon for them to trap souls or memories." "Souls?" Clara echoed, her eyes widening. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes, when someone dies with unresolved issues or emotions, their essence can become trapped in a mirror," Ms. Hargrove explained. "The whispers you hear could be the echoes of those who are trying to communicate, seeking closure or assistance. It's a delicate balance, and you must approach it with caution." "Do you think my family is connected to this?" Jenna asked, feeling the weight of the past pressing down on her. "Perhaps," Ms. Hargrove replied, her gaze piercing. "It's possible that your family has a legacy intertwined with these echoes. The diary you found. What does it say?" Jenna pulled the diary from her bag and handed it to Ms. Hargrove. As she read the faded pages, the historian's expression shifted, a mixture of concern and recognition washing over her face. "This is significant," she murmured. "Your grandmother seemed to have been aware of the shadows even then. She wrote about a reflection of the past and mentioned a warning, something about needing to confront what lies beneath the surface." "What does it mean?" Clara pressed. "It means that you need to delve deeper into your family's history," Ms. Hargrove said, looking up from the diary. "Find out if there are any other artifacts or documents. They may hold the key to understanding the whispers and breaking the cycle." Jenna's mind raced. "But where do we even start?" "There are records at the local library, and I can help you access them," Ms. Hargrove offered. "But remember, you must be cautious. The shadows won't take kindly to your inquiry." "Thank you," Jenna replied, a flicker of hope igniting within her. "We'll do whatever it takes." As they prepared to leave, Ms. Hargrove paused. "One last thing. Be aware that mirrors can reflect more than just images. They can reveal truths you may not be ready to face." Jenna nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "I understand." They stepped back into the cool night air, the weight of their mission settling heavily on their shoulders. Clara turned to Jenna, her expression a mixture of fear and resolve. "What now?" "Now we gather our resources," Jenna said, determination sparking within her. "We'll visit the library tomorrow and search for anything related to my family. We need to learn more about what we're dealing with." As they walked away from Ms. Hargrove's house, Jenna felt the shadows shifting behind her, but she pressed forward, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The whispers called to her, their urgency growing stronger, and she knew she had to heed their call. That night, Jenna lay awake in bed, the echoes of the evening swirling in her mind. The diary's words haunted her, each page revealing a deeper layer of her family's history. The idea of confronting the shadows that had haunted her lineage filled her with trepidation, but there was also a sense of empowerment in acknowledging the truth. With Clara by her side, she felt more prepared than ever. They were not just chasing shadows. They were seeking closure, understanding, and a chance to break free from the past. Jenna closed her eyes, summoning the courage she would need for the journey ahead. As she drifted into a restless sleep, the whispers echoed softly in her mind, intertwining with her dreams. "Find the truth, confront the shadows, set us free." The night wore on, the world outside quiet and still. Yet inside Jenna, a storm of determination brewed. A determination to uncover the secrets hidden beneath the surface and to reclaim her family's legacy once and for all. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she was ready to face whatever lay ahead, even if it meant stepping into the very heart of darkness itself. The next day dawned with a heavy fog that clung to the streets like a shroud. Jenna and Clara made their way to the town library, an imposing structure that had stood for over a century, its stone facade worn by time, but still holding an air of dignified strength. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," Clara said, her voice low as they approached the entrance. "What if we find something unsettling? Then we deal with it," Jenna replied, determination etched on her face. "We have to know the truth, no matter how disturbing it may be." They stepped inside, the scent of old books and polished wood enveloping them. The library was nearly empty, the silence punctuated only by the soft rustle of pages and the distant creak of the floorboards. A librarian sat behind the counter, her eyes peering over her glasses as she regarded the two girls. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice sharp yet welcoming. "We're looking for information about the local history," Jenna said, her heart racing. "Specifically, anything related to families in the area and mirrors." The librarian's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of recognition crossing her features. "You might want to check the archives upstairs. There are records and some old newspaper articles that might be of interest." "Thank you," Jenna replied, and she and Clara made their way up the winding staircase to the second floor. The archives were dimly lit, filled with towering shelves stacked with dusty volumes and yellowing newspapers. A heavy silence hung in the air, as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for the right moment to reveal its secrets. "Where do we even start?" Clara asked, glancing around. "Let's begin with any records about my family," Jenna suggested, her pulse quickening. "Maybe there's something in the newspaper archives." They pulled several boxes of newspapers from the shelves, sifting through the brittle pages, searching for any mention of Jenna's family. Hours passed as they combed through headlines and articles, the tension in the air palpable. "Here," Clara exclaimed suddenly, holding up a faded article. "It's about a fire in your grandmother's house. It happened years ago." Jenna took the article, her heart pounding as she read the headline. "Local family escapes devastating fire. Mystery surrounds cause." The article detailed how a fire had broken out in the middle of the night, destroying most of the house. Thankfully, Jenna's grandmother and her family had escaped, but there was no clear explanation for how the fire had started. "Do you think it's connected to the mirror?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It could be," Jenna replied, a chill creeping up her spine. "It's like there's a pattern. First the whispers, then the diary, and now this fire. It all feels connected." They continued their search, flipping through more articles, but nothing else seemed to relate to Jenna's family or the mirror. Frustration began to creep in as they realized they might not find the answers they were seeking in the archives. "Let's look for any old records or family trees," Clara suggested. Maybe there's something in the genealogy section that could provide insight. They moved to a nearby shelf filled with family history books, scouring the titles until they found what they were looking for. Jenna's heart raced as she opened a large, dusty tome filled with names and dates. As they scanned the pages, a name caught Jenna's eye. Evelyn Thompson. "That's my grandmother's name," she gasped. "Look, there are notes beside her name," Clara pointed out, excitement bubbling in her voice. "Maybe they'll give us some clues." The notes were sparse but hinted at a troubled past. One entry mentioned mysterious occurrences and warnings from the beyond, referencing a need to be cautious of the past. "What does it mean?" Clara asked, frowning as she flipped through the pages. "It means we need to find out more about her life before the fire," Jenna replied, feeling a sense of urgency. "If she knew about the shadows or the mirror, we need to uncover that truth." As they continued searching, Jenna's fingers brushed against an old, leather-bound book tucked away on a lower shelf. It looked out of place, almost forgotten. Curious, she pulled it out, its spine cracked with age. "What did you find?" Clara asked, peering over Jenna's shoulder. "I'm not sure," Jenna replied, flipping it open. The pages were filled with sketches of mirrors, each one accompanied by cryptic notes and symbols that seemed to pulsate with an energy all their own. "Look at this," Jenna said, tracing a finger over a sketch of an ornate mirror. "It's just like the one in my grandmother's house." "What does it say?" Clara urged, leaning closer. "The Mirror of Echoes," Jenna read aloud, her voice trembling. "It says that it reflects not only the surface but the deepest fears and memories of those who gaze into it. It can trap souls seeking closure, but it also reveals truths that can be too painful to bear." Clara's eyes widened. "That sounds just like what we've been experiencing." "Wait, there's more," Jenna continued, her heart racing. "It also mentions that it must be faced, not feared, to break the cycle. Only then can the trapped souls find peace." "What does that mean for us?" Clara asked, a note of apprehension in her voice. "It means we need to confront the mirror," Jenna replied, a resolve building within her. "We need to face whatever is haunting us." Suddenly, the library's clock chimed, its echo reverberating through the quiet room. Jenna felt a shiver run down her spine, the weight of her discovery settling heavily on her shoulders. "Let's head back," Clara suggested, her voice barely audible. "We can't put this off any longer." As they gathered their findings and made their way downstairs, Jenna's mind was racing. She felt the weight of the whispers intensifying, calling her back to the mirror that held her family's secrets. The idea of facing the truth both terrified and exhilarated her. The fog had thickened outside, wrapping the town in a ghostly embrace as they walked home. The atmosphere felt charged with energy, as if the very air was urging them forward. When they reached Jenna's house, she paused at the front door, her heart pounding. "Are you ready for this?" she asked Clara, her voice steady despite the anxiety coursing through her. "I'm with you," Clara replied, a fierce determination shining in her eyes. "Let's do this." With that, they stepped inside, the familiar surroundings now feeling charged with an unspoken tension. The mirror awaited them, its secrets lingering in the shadows. Jenna took a deep breath, the weight of the past pressing heavily on her chest. They were about to confront the shadows that had haunted her family for generations, and the echoes of the past were calling for their reckoning. As they approached the mirror, the room grew silent, and Jenna felt the air shift around them. The whispers grew louder, intertwining with her thoughts, urging her to take the next step. With Clara by her side, Jenna was ready to face whatever lay beyond the glass, determined to uncover the truth and bring the shadows into the light. The time had come to confront the mirror, and Jenna knew there was no turning back. The journey to reclaim her family's legacy was about to reach its climax, and she was prepared to face the darkness head-on. The air felt electric as Jenna and Clara approached the mirror, a polished surface that seemed to breathe with the weight of the secrets it held. Jenna's heart raced, and a wave of emotions flooded over her. Fear, anticipation, and an overwhelming urge to uncover the truth. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Clara asked, her voice laced with concern. "We have to," Jenna replied, her resolve hardening. "It's the only way to break the cycle. We need to understand what happened to my family and why the mirror is tied to it all." They stood before the mirror, the intricate frame adorned with swirling patterns that seemed to writhe under their gaze. Jenna reached out hesitantly, her fingertips brushing against the cool glass. It felt like a heartbeat, pulsing with an unseen energy. As she looked deeper into the mirror, the world around her began to blur, and the whispers intensified, swirling around her like a tempest. "What do you want?" Jenna demanded, her voice steady despite the rising panic inside her. In response, the surface of the mirror rippled, distorting their reflections. A shadowy figure emerged, shrouded in darkness. Jenna's breath hitched as she squinted to see through the haze. "Show yourself," she commanded. The figure solidified, revealing a woman with sorrowful eyes, her face eerily familiar. "Jenna," she spoke, her voice echoing through the air, carrying a weight of grief. "You've come to seek the truth. Who are you?" Jenna asked, her heart racing. "Are you my grandmother's?" "Yes, my dear. I am Evelyn," the figure replied, her voice like a distant memory. "I have watched over you, waiting for the day you would confront the past. The mirror holds the key to our family's history, but it is also a curse." "What curse?" Clara interjected, stepping closer to Jenna. "What happened in this house?" Evelyn's expression turned somber, and the air grew heavy with the burden of the story she was about to share. The mirror was a gift, a family heirloom passed down through generations. It holds the ability to reflect the deepest fears and desires of those who gaze into it. But it also traps the souls of those who cannot find closure. I was one of them. "What do you mean?" Jenna pressed, feeling the weight of Evelyn's words pressing down on her. "What did you do?" "I sought answers about my past," Evelyn admitted, her voice filled with sorrow. "But the mirror revealed more than I could bear. I saw my own mistakes, the pain I caused, and the secrets I kept hidden. I was consumed by my regrets and could not free myself from its grasp. It ensnared my spirit, and I became trapped between worlds." Jenna felt a knot form in her stomach. "Is that what happened to my family? Is that why we're haunted?" "Yes," Evelyn replied, her gaze piercing through Jenna. "The fire was no accident. It was a manifestation of my sorrow and anger. I lost control, and in my despair, I trapped myself and my family in a cycle of pain. Only by confronting the past can you break free." "What do we need to do?" Clara asked, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "You must face your fears, your memories, and confront the darkness that resides within," Evelyn explained. "Only then can the truth be revealed, and the souls trapped by the mirror can find peace." The shadows around Evelyn began to swirl, and Jenna felt the urge to flee. "But how? I don't know if I can face it," she exclaimed, her voice trembling. "You have already taken the first step by seeking the truth," Evelyn replied, her expression softening. "Your courage is greater than you realize. Stand before the mirror and reflect upon your deepest fears and the memories that haunt you. Allow the mirror to show you what you need to confront." Jenna swallowed hard, determination flooding her veins. "I can do this," she declared, glancing at Clara, who nodded in support. "Together," Clara affirmed, "we'll face whatever it is." Evelyn smiled, a hint of pride in her eyes. "Remember, you are not alone. You have the strength of your ancestors within you. Trust in that strength, and let go of the burdens you carry." Taking a deep breath, Jenna stepped forward, her heart racing as she gazed into the mirror's depths. The surface shimmered, revealing glimpses of her life. The laughter of childhood, the warmth of family gatherings, and the shadowy figures of sorrow that lingered at the edges. As the images shifted, Jenna saw her reflection morph into a younger version of herself, standing alone in a dark room, tears streaming down her face. "Why didn't you help me?" the child version of herself cried out, the sound echoing through the chamber. "I didn't know how," Jenna shouted, feeling the weight of her younger self's pain. "I was scared. I felt powerless." The mirror responded by amplifying the emotions, and Jenna was enveloped in a whirlwind of memories. She felt the weight of loneliness, the ache of loss, and the suffocating fear that had gripped her heart for years. "No more," Clara shouted, stepping beside Jenna. "We won't let this control us any longer." The mirror shimmered, and the images shifted again, revealing Jenna's grandmother standing in the same dark room, her face etched with regret. "I should have told you the truth," Evelyn's voice rang out, echoing from the depths of the mirror. "I was afraid of the pain it would cause. Why didn't you trust me?" Jenna's voice broke as she confronted her grandmother's spirit. "I could have helped you. I was lost," Evelyn admitted, her voice filled with sorrow. "I wanted to protect you from the truth, but it only trapped me further. You must let go of the fear of the past to break this cycle." Jenna felt a surge of determination as she stared into the mirror, the whirlwind of memories swirling around her. "I forgive you," she said, her voice strong. "I forgive you for not telling me the truth." As the words left her lips, a bright light exploded from the mirror, illuminating the room and dispersing the shadows that clung to the corners. Jenna felt a rush of warmth and clarity as the swirling images began to fade. Evelyn's spirit smiled, a serene expression washing over her features. "Thank you, Jenna. Now it's time to set us all free." With that, the mirror began to pulse, and the memories erupted like fireworks, each one illuminating the dark corners of Jenna's heart. She felt the weight of the past lift as she released the fears that had held her captive for so long. Clara stood by her side, holding her hand tightly as they watched the shadows dissipate, leaving only the shimmering surface of the mirror behind. The air was filled with a sense of peace and liberation, as if the very fabric of the room had shifted. The mirror glowed brightly for a moment before settling into its original state, the darkness that had once enveloped it now gone. Jenna and Clara exchanged glances, the weight of the past finally lifting from their shoulders. "We did it," Clara breathed, tears of relief glistening in her eyes. Jenna nodded, feeling a profound sense of closure wash over her. "We faced the truth together." As they turned to leave, Jenna felt a gentle breeze pass through the room, carrying with it the whispers of her ancestors, now filled with gratitude and peace. The mirror had revealed its secrets, and in doing so, it had set her family free. With newfound strength, Jenna stepped out of the room, ready to embrace the future without the burden of the past weighing her down. Together, she and Clara walked away, leaving the shadows behind and stepping into the light of a new beginning. Days turned into weeks after that pivotal night, and Jenna felt a shift within herself. The burden of her family's past no longer clung to her. Instead, it had transformed into a quiet strength. The mirror, once a source of dread, now stood as a reminder of resilience and liberation. Jenna and Clara had grown closer through the ordeal, sharing countless late-night conversations filled with laughter, dreams, and the occasional tear. They often visited the old house, now filled with a warmth that had been absent for so long. The echoes of the past no longer haunted them. Instead, they felt the presence of their ancestors watching over them, encouraging them to forge ahead. One sunny afternoon, they decided to hold a small gathering in the backyard, inviting friends and family to celebrate the newfound lightness in their lives. Clara helped Jenna set up, stringing fairy lights across the trees and arranging picnic blankets on the grass. "Do you think everyone will like it?" Jenna asked, glancing nervously at the arrangements. "Of course. It's a celebration of new beginnings," Clara replied, a wide grin stretching across her face. "And everyone will want to hear about the haunted mirror story. It's become legendary." As the sun dipped below the horizon, friends began to arrive, filling the yard with laughter and chatter. Jenna's heart swelled with gratitude as she watched the people she loved come together. It was a stark contrast to the isolation she had felt before, and she reveled in the sense of community surrounding her. As they gathered around a fire pit, Jenna took a deep breath, ready to share her story. "I want to tell you all something important," she started, her voice steady despite the flutter in her stomach. "This house holds a lot of history. My family has gone through some tough times, but I want to share how we've learned to face our past and let it go." The crowd fell silent, their eyes fixed on her as she recounted the haunting experiences they had faced with the mirror and the journey toward forgiveness and healing. She shared how confronting her grandmother's spirit had brought peace to their family, and she could see the mixture of astonishment and empathy wash over her friends. When she finished, there was a moment of stillness before applause erupted. Clara clapped the loudest, tears shining in her eyes. "You're amazing, Jenna. Your bravery inspires us all." As the evening wore on, the conversations shifted to lighter topics, filled with laughter and joy. Jenna felt as if she were living in a dream, surrounded by love and support. Yet, as she glanced toward the house, she felt a flicker of unease, a nagging reminder of the past. Later that night, after the guests had left, Clara stayed to help clean up. "What's wrong?" she asked, noticing Jenna's distant gaze. "I don't know. I guess I'm just thinking about everything," Jenna replied, her brow furrowed. "I feel like I've finally let go of the pain, but there's still a part of me that worries. What if the darkness returns?" Clara placed a comforting hand on Jenna's shoulder. "It won't. You faced it and emerged stronger. The mirror's power was broken when you chose forgiveness. Remember that." Jenna nodded, grateful for Clara's unwavering support. Yet, the uncertainty lingered in the back of her mind. That night, she found it hard to sleep, tossing and turning as shadows danced across her walls. Suddenly, a loud crash broke the stillness. Jenna bolted upright, heart pounding. "Clara," she shouted, but there was no response. Panic surged through her as she jumped out of bed and rushed to the living room. The source of the noise became clear. A large picture frame had fallen off the wall, shattering glass across the floor. The photo it had contained was still intact, though the face smiling back at her felt oddly foreboding. It was a family photo taken years ago, before the turmoil had begun. Jenna knelt down to pick up the shards, her hands shaking. As she cleared away the broken glass, she felt a chill wash over her. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to grow darker, more alive. "Is anyone there?" Jenna called out, her voice trembling. Silence enveloped her. She was about to convince herself it was just her imagination when she heard it, a faint whisper, like a breeze rustling through leaves. It came from the hallway, beckoning her closer. "Clara," Jenna called again, fear creeping into her voice. She moved toward the hallway, the darkness wrapping around her like a shroud. As she stepped into the corridor, the air grew colder, and the whisper grew clearer. "Jenna, help me." It was a voice she recognized. It was her grandmother's, Evelyn. Jenna breathed, dread pooling in her stomach. "What do you want?" "Finish what we started," the voice urged, echoing softly through the darkness. "There is more to uncover." Jenna felt a surge of fear and confusion. "But I thought we were free. I thought I had let go." "You have not yet faced the final truth," the voice insisted. "The mirror holds one last secret. You must find it before it's too late." "Where?" Jenna demanded, glancing around nervously. "In the attic," the whisper replied, fading into silence. With her heart racing, Jenna turned to Clara's room. She needed to wake her, to have someone by her side as she faced whatever darkness awaited. But Clara was nowhere to be found. "Clara," Jenna called, her voice rising in panic. The house felt unnervingly quiet, amplifying the dread that consumed her. After checking the bathroom and the kitchen, Jenna realized Clara must have left the house to get some fresh air, or perhaps to gather her thoughts after the chaotic night. She could feel the weight of Evelyn's words pressing against her chest. Summoning her courage, Jenna made her way to the attic, a place that had always felt ominous and off-limits. The stairs creaked beneath her feet, echoing in the silence as she ascended. Upon reaching the attic door, Jenna hesitated, hand resting on the knob. She could hear her heartbeat, thudding loudly in her ears. "It's just a room," she whispered to herself, though her voice trembled. With a deep breath, she turned the knob and pushed the door open. The attic was dimly lit, dust motes dancing in the faint light streaming through a small window. Boxes were stacked haphazardly, each one holding the remnants of a lifelong past. Jenna stepped inside, the door creaking shut behind her. She felt an oppressive weight in the air, as if the memories of those who had come before were pressing in on her. As she began to sift through the boxes, a sudden chill enveloped her. "Evelyn," she called out, hoping for a response. But only silence greeted her. She turned her focus back to the boxes, digging through old clothes, toys, and mementos. Each item felt like a piece of a puzzle waiting to be solved. Suddenly, she stumbled upon a small, intricately carved box tucked away in the corner. Its surface was adorned with swirling patterns similar to those on the mirror. Jenna felt a thrill of recognition. This had to be significant. As she reached for the box, the air around her shifted, growing colder. Jenna hesitated, feeling the weight of the moment. With trembling fingers, she opened the box. Inside, she found a collection of letters, each one tied with a faded ribbon. Taking a deep breath, Jenna carefully untied the ribbon and unfolded the first letter. Her eyes scanned the elegant script, and her heart dropped as she recognized her grandmother's handwriting. "Dear Jenna," it began, "if you are reading this, it means you have discovered the truth of our family's history." As Jenna read, the words unfolded like a dark tapestry, revealing secrets of love, loss, and betrayal that had long been buried. Her grandmother spoke of the curse of the mirror and the choices that had led to their family's suffering. Each letter contained confessions, regrets, and a plea for forgiveness. Tears streamed down Jenna's cheeks as she absorbed the weight of her grandmother's words. "I am sorry for the pain I caused, and I hope that you can find it in your heart to forgive me. The mirror holds a power that can only be understood through acceptance and love. You must not let the darkness take hold again. Break the cycle." With each revelation, Jenna felt a sense of clarity wash over her. The past was a tangled web, but understanding it was the key to breaking free. Suddenly, the attic door slammed shut, and Jenna jumped back, her heart racing. "Clara," she shouted, panic rising. But the only response was the ominous creaking of the house. Shadows danced at the edges of her vision, and Jenna felt an undeniable presence surrounding her. "Leave this place," a voice hissed, echoing through the attic, sending chills down her spine. "No," Jenna shouted, her voice trembling but defiant. "I will not be controlled by fear." As the shadows surged closer, Jenna gripped the letters tightly. "I know the truth. I am not afraid of you." In that moment, the energy in the room shifted. The shadows paused, as if taken aback by her courage. The whispering voice began to wane, replaced by the faint echoes of her grandmother's words. "Forgive, accept, release." Driven by a newfound strength, Jenna raised the letters above her head. "I will not let the darkness win," she declared, and with that, she tore the letters in half, releasing the pain contained within them. As the last piece of paper fell from her hands, the shadows recoiled, dissipating like smoke in the wind. The attic was filled with a warm, golden light, illuminating the space and banishing the remnants of fear. The door creaked open slowly, revealing Clara standing there, eyes wide with concern. "Jenna," I heard shouting. "Are you okay?" "I am now," Jenna replied, breathless with relief. "I faced it, Clara. I faced the truth." Clara rushed forward, enveloping Jenna in a warm embrace. "I was so worried. I could feel something was off when you came up here. I found my grandmother's letters," Jenna explained, still shaking with the adrenaline of the confrontation. She shared everything: the pain, the darkness, the regrets. "But it's all over now. I broke the cycle." As they stood together in the attic, the warm light filled the space, casting away the remnants of shadows that had lingered for so long. Jenna felt a weight lift from her shoulders, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace. "I can't believe you faced it alone," Clara said, pulling back to look into Jenna's eyes. "You're so strong." "Thanks to you," Jenna replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without your support." "Let's get out of here," Clara suggested, smiling brightly. "We have a lot to celebrate." As they descended the stairs, the house felt transformed. The oppressive weight of the past had been lifted, replaced by a sense of hope and possibility. Jenna felt lighter than she had in years, ready to embrace the future. Stepping out into the cool night air, Jenna looked up at the stars twinkling overhead. The darkness that had once surrounded her was now just a backdrop for the light that shone through, illuminating the path ahead. "Together, we'll face whatever comes next," Clara said, squeezing Jenna's hand. Jenna smiled, the warmth of friendship radiating through her. "Absolutely." And as they walked away from the house, Jenna knew that she was free, not just from the shadows of her family's past, but to create her own future, one filled with love, acceptance, and the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The days following their encounter in the attic felt surreal for Jenna. With the shadows of her family's past finally behind her, she found herself exploring new horizons, both in her personal life and within her community. The burden that had once weighed heavily on her shoulders had transformed into a sense of liberation, fueling a renewed passion for life. Jenna spent more time with Clara, who had become not only a best friend, but a sister in spirit. They embraced the warmer weather by hiking in nearby woods, enjoying sunny afternoons at local parks, and even signing up for a pottery class together. Laughter filled the air as they shaped clay into whimsical creations, a stark contrast to the heaviness that had once defined Jenna's existence. But amidst this newfound joy, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that the journey wasn't quite over. Her grandmother's letters had opened a door to the past that had been locked for far too long, and she knew there were more stories waiting to be uncovered. In quiet moments, she found herself reflecting on her family's history, yearning to understand the nuances of the lives that had come before her. One afternoon, while sifting through more boxes in the attic, Jenna discovered an old photo album tucked beneath a pile of dusty linens. The cover was faded and worn, but the embossed title, Family Memories, gleamed with promise. Curiosity piqued. She pulled it out, dusting off the cover before carefully flipping it open. The pages were filled with photographs, faded black and white images of family gatherings, birthday celebrations, and candid moments. As Jenna turned each page, she felt a connection to her ancestors, their smiles and laughter leaping off the pages. However, as she continued through the album, a specific image caught her eye: an older woman with strikingly familiar features, standing beside a beautiful, ornate mirror. "Clara," Jenna called out, excitement bubbling in her voice. "You need to see this." Clara rushed into the attic, wiping her hands on her jeans. "What is it?" Jenna pointed to the photograph, her heart racing. "Look at this woman. She looks just like my grandmother. And that mirror, it's the same style as the one we found." Clara leaned in, her brow furrowed in concentration. "That's incredible. What if the mirror was part of your family's history for generations? It could be more than just a haunted object. It might have been a family heirloom." The thought sent shivers down Jenna's spine, both thrilling and terrifying. "What does that mean for us? Is there still more to uncover?" "I think we should find out," Clara replied, her eyes sparkling with determination. "Maybe we can research the mirror's history, see if it has ties to any family legends. There might be more letters or artifacts hidden around here." Jenna felt a rush of adrenaline at the idea. "Let's do it. We need to uncover the truth about our family and this mirror once and for all." Over the next few days, Jenna and Clara dedicated themselves to the search, poring over old family records, interviewing distant relatives, and combing through local historical archives. They unearthed stories of love and loss, resilience and sacrifice, weaving together the rich tapestry of Jenna's family history. As they delved deeper, Jenna discovered a name that kept resurfacing: Evelyn Whitaker. Her grandmother's name, but also the name of a woman who had once been a prominent figure in their town, known for her charitable work and vibrant spirit. However, the more they learned, the more they uncovered a complicated legacy marked by scandal and heartache. "Jenna," Clara said one evening, her voice serious as they sat at Jenna's kitchen table strewn with papers, "there's something unsettling about this. The more I read about Evelyn, the more it seemed she was involved in something dark. There were whispers about her connections to the occult, and even rumors of her performing rituals." Jenna felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Rituals? But she seemed so normal. How could she have been involved in something like that? "I don't know, but it might explain the mirror," Clara replied. "If it was tied to those practices, it could hold more power than we ever realized." The revelation sent Jenna's mind racing. What if the mirror was used to trap spirits or communicate with the dead? What if that's why my grandmother was drawn to it? They continued their research, but the more they uncovered, the more troubling the history became. There were tales of families torn apart by the mirror's influence, individuals driven to madness after engaging with it, and dark rituals gone awry. Jenna began to question if her family was truly free from its grasp. Determined to put an end to the cycle, Jenna devised a plan. They would return to the mirror, confront it once more, and reclaim its power. this time with the knowledge they had gained. "We need to go back to the attic," she told Clara one evening, a sense of purpose igniting within her. "We can't let the mirror dictate our family's fate anymore." Clara agreed, her expression resolute. "Let's do it together." That night, they climbed back up to the attic, heartbeats pounding with anticipation. Jenna retrieved the mirror from its dusty cover, its surface still gleaming in the dim light. The whispers of the past seemed to swirl around them, and Jenna felt a shiver of unease. "Remember what your grandmother said," Clara reminded her. "We're here to reclaim our power." Jenna nodded, placing her hands firmly on the frame. "I release you from our family's past. You will not control us any longer." The air around them thickened, and a familiar chill washed over Jenna as the mirror began to shimmer. Shadows flitted at the edges of her vision, and she felt the weight of ancestral spirits gathering. "Evelyn," Jenna shouted, her voice strong. "We know your story. We understand your pain, but we will not be bound by it." The whispers intensified, swirling around them like a storm. Shadows danced along the walls, and Jenna could feel a presence pushing against her, testing her resolve. "Please listen to me," Jenna cried, fear bubbling within her. "We choose love and acceptance over darkness. We release the hold you have over our family." The mirror rippled, reflecting images of her ancestors. Moments of joy and sorrow intertwined. Jenna could see her grandmother, a mix of determination and fear etched across her features. "Let go, Evelyn," she shouted, her voice ringing clear. With a final surge of energy, Jenna focused on the love she felt for her family. The memories of laughter, warmth, and connection that had always been a part of her. "We are stronger together. We break this curse." In that moment, the mirror shattered with a blinding light, scattering shards across the attic. The room filled with a warm glow as the shadows dissolved, replaced by a gentle breeze that swirled around them. Jenna and Clara stood together, breathless as the remnants of the past faded away. The attic felt lighter, as if the weight of centuries had finally lifted. Jenna glanced around, her heart swelling with relief and hope. "We did it," Clara whispered, tears of joy glistening in her eyes. "We broke the cycle." As they stood in the now illuminated attic, Jenna realized that she was finally free, not just from the darkness of the mirror, but from the fears and burdens that had haunted her family for generations. "Let's celebrate," Jenna said, smiling through her tears. "Let's embrace this new beginning." Hand in hand, they descended the attic stairs, filled with a renewed sense of purpose. Jenna knew that the journey wasn't over, but she was ready to face whatever lay ahead, equipped with the knowledge of her past and the love of those who stood by her side. The light of dawn broke through the windows as they emerged into the living room, symbolizing the new chapter of their lives. It was a new dawn, a fresh start, a promise of brighter days ahead, and together, they would embrace whatever came next. With the dawn of a new day, Jenna felt a sense of hope that she had never experienced before. As the sun spilled golden light into her home, she realized that she had emerged from the shadows, ready to carve a new path for herself and her family. The mirror, now a collection of shards that had scattered across the attic floor, symbolized not just the end of a haunting, but the potential for renewal. In the following weeks, Jenna and Clara poured their energies into revitalizing Jenna's home. They redecorated rooms, turned clutter into cozy spaces, and even started a small garden in the backyard. The laughter that echoed through the walls was a stark contrast to the silence that had once filled the house. But Jenna knew there was more to be done. She wanted to honor her family's past while ensuring that the darkness it held would never creep back into her life. She started organizing family gatherings, reaching out to distant relatives, and inviting them to share their stories. The idea of connection and unity became a foundation for the new chapter she was building. One sunny afternoon, Jenna hosted her first family reunion in years. The backyard was filled with the sense of grilled food, laughter, and the sound of children playing. Clara helped set up, hanging colorful banners and arranging seating under the trees. Jenna felt a thrill of anticipation as she watched her family arrive, faces she hadn't seen in far too long. "Are you ready?" Clara asked, her hands on her hips, a playful grin on her face. "More than ever," Jenna replied, her heart racing with excitement. As the afternoon unfolded, Jenna moved through the crowd, reconnecting with family members, sharing stories, and reliving memories. She felt a renewed sense of belonging and purpose, surrounded by the warmth of those she loved. Her grandmother's spirit seemed to linger in the air, a gentle reminder of the importance of family ties. Later in the day, as dusk began to settle, Jenna gathered everyone around to share her own story. "I want to thank all of you for being here today," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "For too long, our family has been shrouded in darkness. But together, we can embrace the light." Her relatives listened intently as she recounted her journey with the mirror, her grandmother's letters, and the truths she had unearthed. She felt a sense of liberation as she shared the lessons learned, how love and understanding could conquer the shadows of the past. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the backyard, Jenna concluded her story. "Let's promise to support each other, to cherish our history, and to ensure that we never lose sight of the love that binds us together." The crowd erupted in applause, tears glistening in the corners of many eyes. Jenna felt a wave of relief wash over her, knowing that she had done more than just break a cycle. She had created a new legacy, one filled with hope and resilience. As the night wore on, conversations flowed freely and laughter filled the air. Jenna felt a profound sense of gratitude for the connection she had nurtured and the love that surrounded her. The weight of the past had lifted, replaced by the promise of brighter days ahead. Weeks turned into months, and the seasons changed, but the bond within Jenna's family continued to strengthen. They embraced traditions that honored their ancestors while also creating new memories that would be passed down through generations. Clara remained by Jenna's side, her confidant and partner in everything. Together, they explored the deeper meanings of family history, understanding how the past could guide their future without overshadowing it. They even started a community project to preserve the stories of those who had come before them, hoping to share the lessons learned with others who might be struggling with their own shadows. One evening, as Jenna sat on her porch watching the sunset, she reflected on how far she had come. The journey had been arduous, but it had led her to a place of acceptance and understanding. She felt a sense of peace enveloping her, a tranquility that had once seemed impossible. Suddenly, she heard a gentle breeze rustle through the trees, carrying with it the faintest whisper of a familiar voice. Jenna smiled, her heart swelling with warmth. It was as if her grandmother were there with her, offering encouragement and love from beyond. In that moment, Jenna realized that the past would always be a part of her, but it would not define her. The mirror, once a symbol of darkness, had transformed into a reminder of resilience and the power of connection. As the first stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Jenna closed her eyes and made a silent promise to herself. She would honor her family's legacy, not just by remembering their struggles, but by celebrating their joys. She would forge ahead, unafraid of the future, knowing that love and light would always prevail over darkness. Jenna took a deep breath, the cool evening air filling her lungs, and opened her eyes to the vast expanse of the sky above. With a heart full of hope and a spirit renewed, she was ready to embrace whatever adventures lay ahead, knowing that she would never have to face them alone. Don't forget to subscribe in the channel and like the video for more contents.